talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome to View from the West podcast, brought to you by Breedlove Sporting Goods, part of the River Rivals Media Network, the podcast covering Illinois high school football on the western side of the state. I'm your host, Greg Armstrong, joined by Mitch Stormer. And Mitch, let's start off by saying Bears win on the road on Monday night on a field goal with a backup kicker. I'll take it.
Yep. Yeah, shout out to Jake Moody. Great win for the Bears. Yeah, we have been, anyone listening to this or watching this doesn't know this, but we've been kind of recording a little bit out of order tonight. So we're watching this as we were recording earlier. So yeah, good win for the Bears.
Yep.
Way to get some payback from last year on that Commanders game.
No kidding. No doubt about it. Get that game out of your memory forever now. All right, Mitch. Well, here we go. A huge week of high school football. I feel like we say it every week, but the later in the season it gets, these matchups mean more and more. If you haven't already, go back, listen to the Instant Reacts podcast. We had live coaches interviews like we do every week. Kyle Demas from Dupec. We had Jeremy Adolphson from the Monmouth Roseville Titans. They are back-to-back champs in the track Mississippi. We also had Matt Furlong from Geneseo. The Maple Leafs get the big win over Sterling. We'll talk about that game here in a minute. But a great week of high school football that just happened. And we're going to preview a great week of high school football coming up. But if you haven't already, go out, check out the Instant Reacts. And of course, like and subscribe, as the kids say. Our subscriber number continues to grow. Let's get it up to 750. That was the goal. I would say about halfway through the season, we decided that was the goal, and we're inching closer every day. So I love it. I appreciate everyone who already has subscribed. Keep them coming.
Yeah, we're about 100 away. I think I just looked 644, so we're getting there.
Look at that.
Getting close.
Look at that. I love it. All right, let's get into our viewpoints. The viewpoints on View from the West are brought to you by First Wealth Financial Group. Head to firstwealthfinancialgroup.com to get in touch with their team today. Mitch, your viewpoints from Week 7.
Okay. I've got two. Well, okay, yeah. I've got two viewpoints. The one is a little bit more involved. The first one, I just want to kind of, I don't remember if we've ever done this, that we've given a list of nominees or finalists for our Breedlove's Player of the Week award, but this week, more than any week that I can remember, had memorable performances across all the conferences that we cover. And this was by far the hardest we've ever had to think about, to make a decision about, and just to flat out award the Player of the Week, because there were so many unbelievable performances this week. And I would like to use my time here, Greg, if I may, to run down the list of candidates here.
Mitch, the floor is yours.
All right. Let's start in the LLC. Farmington. Their freshman quarterback, Carson Noy, has been having a fantastic year all year. How about this? 19 of 24, 376 yards, and 7 touchdowns in their win against Rova Williamsfield. Unbelievable night for Carson. In the track, you had Nick Houston of Monmouth Roseville set a school record of 282 yards rushing with 3 touchdowns on the ground. That wasn't it. He also threw a touchdown pass and caught a touchdown pass and was all over on defense.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, so Nick Houston, unbelievable week, unbelievable season. Talk about unbelievable weeks and seasons. How about in the NUIC, Dermot Dolan of Dupec, 334 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns in their win over Forreston. He's over 1,100 yards on the year now. 2 names that we talk about all the time in the Big Northern. Caden Constantine of Byron had 328 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 2 receiving touchdowns. A lot of that was in the first half. Speaking of doing things early in the game, how about Landon Carnegie of Dixon? 250 rushing yards, 5 first quarter touchdowns for Landon. His season continues to be unbelievable. It'll be a real battle between those two as to who gets the View from the West Player of the Year in the Big Northern. And then for good measure, let's head back to the LLC. How about Rushville Industries dynamic duo of Sebastian Berteau and Rylan Reimholtz? Both were over 200 yards in their win and a combined 5 touchdowns. So once again, I cannot remember a better week. That's just some of them. There throughout this show, we'll name a couple more that I didn't even include on this list, but such a fantastic week as a fan to see these performances, and a very, very hard week as a podcast host that awards Player of the Weeks, because this was a tough one.
Yeah, this was a really tough week, and I will say you ended with Rushville Industry there. They might be up for another award as well, based on kind of their performance and their offensive production. So, Mitch, I'll get back to you, but my viewpoint kind of piggybacks off of what you just talked about. Speaking of big numbers, looking at the college level, did you catch the Monmouth Fighting Scots performance this last weekend? Yeah. Huge win for them. 2 records, well, multiple records from 2 of our local athletes. You had former Rockridge Rocket quarterback Braden Deem had a school record 453 passing yards. His favorite target, a Morrison wide receiver who you remember well, Mitch, Chase Newman, had a school record 301 receiving yards. They also combined for the longest play from scrimmage in school history. So
crazy.
When you're talking offensive records at Monmouth College, that carries a little bit of weight, because the record the Dean broke was the single game record set by current Indianapolis Colts coach and former NFL quarterback Alex Tanney. So that's high stock. That's high praise there.
Greg, did you know that during Alex Tanney's time, at least one of the seasons there he was at Monmouth, I was the color guy on their broadcasts?
I believe you told me that. We've talked about that in the past.
Yeah. So it's possible I called the game that he set the record on. I don't know for sure. But no, we saw this come across the wires, and just fantastic for 2 players that we had a pleasure covering. And really, at first they said Chase Newman had 250, and then on Sunday they were like, nope. We looked back at the tape and we miscredited a catch, and sure enough, he got 50 more yards. So, we love seeing this stuff. We love seeing guys that we covered finding success for the local colleges, and Braden and Chase. Unbelievable job, great effort, great win.
Yep. All right, Mitch, you got one more viewpoint here, and I want to hear this.
All right. So, anyone who has listened to this show knows that I went to high school with, played football with Coach Austin Rickles, who's assistant coach at Lee Wynn. He's a head track coach there. We played for his dad at Morrison when we were in high school. I was not able to get back to his wedding this weekend. I had some prior engagements with my kids. Couldn't get away, couldn't get back in town. But that was not without a late night FaceTime from some of my friends who were there. And talking to them, obviously, Austin gets on the phone. The first thing he does, he looks at me. I'm wearing my Stockton Blackhawks shirt.
Oh no.
This is his wedding night. First thing he says to me is, "Why are you wearing a Stockton Blackhawks hoodie?" And that set the tone. But I then say, after we talk for a little while, I say, where's your bride? Where's Jess at? So they call her over. She comes over. And the look that the bride gave me, the very first look, and she says, "Why are you wearing a Stockton Blackhawks hoodie?" I swear to God, the first 2 things they said to me on their wedding night was, "Why was I wearing a Stockton Blackhawks hoodie?" And I was. But you know what? I had to explain. I said, if Lena Winslow would send me some gear, I'd wear it. But for the night, on their wedding night, I was wearing I wasn't even thinking about it at the time. And it was so funny that both of them, that was the first thing they said to me. And the look of disgust on both of their faces.
Man, wearing the enemy colors on their wedding night. Oh, man.
So that was a fun Saturday interaction.
That's amazing. All right, well, moving into Mitch's mentions, Mitch, I'm going to go ahead. I might steal your thunder today and take over the mentions this week, because it was Geneseo's homecoming, their Hall of Fame night. I kind of felt like it was a homecoming for me in some ways, seeing so many people I hadn't seen in a while. I got to start with Dalkin always shooting highlights for Geneseo football, and it's been several years since I've seen him, so great to be back on the sidelines with him. He immediately called out a story of me editing on the side of the field at Gately Stadium at about 9:30 at a halftime of a Geneseo and I believe Chicago Phillips playoff game years and years ago. I'd forgot all about that. That was a great night, traveling all over the state that night from Ottawa to Chicago and back to the Quad Cities. But we were just reminiscing about some good stories. Great to see him. I also saw Jesse Dobbles, Geneseo super fan, up in the press box. I would say I run into him about once a year, so it's good to see him up there in the press box. Saw Bill Horrell on the sidelines, longtime Quad Cities sports broadcaster. He's now the host of the Geneseo Coaches Show every week, so cool to see him. And I had never met assistant coach Patrick Babcock, but he says that we keep him up way too late on a Friday night turning into a Saturday morning. And I said, hey, man, I know how that goes because by the time we get done recording, I'm like wired. I'm not falling asleep either. So he loves the show, but I think we keep him up pretty late there. So also, of course, shout out to longtime friend of the show, Brad Monier. He gave me a quick fist bump on the sideline before the game got started. On the other sideline, I talked to Matt Gingrich from Sterling. So, like I said, Mitch, so many people that I had to mention there. So I'm stealing your segment this week.
No, you had all the right to take that segment. So good on you for seeing so many familiar faces and great atmosphere as always there. In Geneseo.
I believe now the coaching staff, as long as Bill Horrell promised me he was going to hand them out, I believe the Geneseo coaching staff now all has view from the West Koozies. So,
I don't even think I have one. To be honest with you,
you might not actually. So,
I have Breedlove's koozies. I don't think I have a view from the West.
Hey, that trip to state, Mitch, is going to pay off for you.
All right, excellent.
There you go.
Perfect.
All right, Mitch. Well, speaking of Breedloves, you got to tell the people who we thank.
Yeah. Well, you know where you can get your koozies, Greg. Tonight's episode is brought to you by our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniform, apparel, equipment, koozies, awards, and online team stores. They provide all the same sporting goods services as the big nationwide companies, but with a faster turnaround, and their uniform pricing is a fraction of the cost you're probably used to. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. Check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com.
All right, Mitch, let's before we get into the games and the matchups that will be in Week 8, I kind of want to take a minute, just kind of hit the reset button, set the foundation here. What's the playoff picture look like? So we're looking at teams that are locked in, 6 wins or more. Give us the rundown on those teams.
All right, so we're up to 12 teams there by my count. I added a couple this week with big wins, but overall what we're looking at right now, locked in, Stockton, Annawan, Wethersfield. Those will be our, I don't know if they're only 1A teams. We'll just not even, we don't even go there. Stockton, Annawan, Wethersfield, Rock Ridge, Farmington, Byron, Monmouth Roseville, Lena Winslow, Newman, Dupec, Macomb, Dixon, and Moline. 6 wins or more.
There you go. How about 5-win teams?
All right. There we have Stark County, Princeville, Erie, Prophetstown, Geneseo, and Quincy all sitting at that 5-2 mark.
So the teams we've listed there, they're either locked in or they're qualified for the playoffs. More than likely, these 5-win teams are pretty much locked in as well. But this is where things get interesting. So let's talk the next up, the 4-win teams, and it's kind of more interesting to look at what they have left. So give us a list here.
All right, we'll break this up a little bit. Knoxville, Forreston, Eastland, Pearl City, and Riverdale. We'll start with that group.
All right.
First.
So out of that group, Mitch, what team kind of stands out to you? I think that Riverdale having Hall and Sherrard. We'll talk more about that. Hall game is interesting to me. Sherrard coming off a victory, but I think you'd say Riverdale's the favorite in both of these games. So that's a team right there.
Yeah, that group of 4 that we just talked about. Yeah, Riverdale has the easiest path. I would have said something similar about Knoxville, but then Ottawa Marquette blew the doors off of Elmwood Brimfield this week, and now I wasn't as high on your Crusaders as I should be. But even then, Knoxville still has a tough game in week 9 against Stark County. So that is a tough path. Forreston, we'll talk about this game later with Kyle. A huge game against Leroy. That could have implications not only for both of those teams as playoff chances, but it also could maybe determine kind of some 1A and 2A playoff teams and where those enrollments will cut off. And then they have Stockton. So not an easy path for Forreston. And then EPC coming off of a really, really tough loss against Stockton. Now they've got Lena Winslow, but then they do have a week 9 game against Dakota. So I believe there still is a path for EPC to get in to the playoffs. But yeah, it's going to get interesting these last couple weeks.
Yep. All right, let's look at some of our, the rest of our teams down the way here.
Okay. All right, the next group, let's go with, again, these are teams with 4 wins. And again, if I miss somebody, that's just on me. Oregon, Sterling, West Hancock, Stillman Valley, North Boone, Princeton, and United Township.
I'm looking at Princeton. I think they get the win over Mercer County. The Erie Prophetstown game is interesting to me. I think
this should be a fun one.
Yeah, I think it definitely should be. Man, I think 2 weeks ago I just said, yeah, Princeton. Well, I probably did on the Crystal Ball episode. I probably said Princeton's the favorite. I don't know. The way that EP's been playing, maybe you consider that a little different now.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, okay, for starters, I don't remember what I said in the Crystal Ball. I'm not going to hold myself accountable to that either. But as the weeks go on, teams play better and your projections change. So, yeah, don't hold us accountable to what we said 2 weeks ago because, God knows we were wrong.
All right.
What we weren't wrong about, Greg, we did say keep an eye out on West Hancock.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
They get the win. They get the win last week to get to 4. I think they're going to win out. I think they will get the win against BV to get in that qualifying 5th, and I think they'll defeat Walter Christian to get a 6th win. So really good job from Coach Dorothy and West Hancock there. I think Oregon will get in. I think they beat Winnebago this week. And then I don't – is Dwight not having a great year? I don't remember.
I think that they've lost a few games down the way here.
Either way, I think Oregon gets to 5, and that'll get them into their playoffs. Sterling, really intriguing game with Quincy this week, but then I do believe that they'll get at least their 5th win in week 9 against Rocky. Stillman Valley's been playing well. I think they can win out. North Boone and Winnebago left. North Boone has been tricky. They're kind of spotty week to week. North Boone is another team with 4 wins, so that's a must-win game this week, I think, between Stillman Valley and North Boone because North Boone has Byron in week 9. And then you've got United Township, a great game upcoming against Moline. And then whether the week 9 game against Alleman occurs or it doesn't, I think they'll win that game regardless. So I do believe United Township will get back into the playoffs, I think for the first time since 2001, if I read that right. So yeah, this kind of next group of 6 or 7 that we just talked about, I think we'll see more get in there from that first set of 4. But again, these next 2 weeks, anything can happen.
Yep.
A lot of teams with their backs against the wall.
Yep. All right, should we get into a few 3-win teams that really have a lot of work to do here?
Yeah. So let's talk about these 6 teams. Galena, Elmwood Brimfield, Havana, Genoa Kingston, Spring Valley Hall, and Illini West.
Yeah, I think Galena has a shot there. That Fulton Galena game is really interesting in week 9.
It will be that the way that Fulton's been playing. They've won back-to-back games. I think they do have a winnable game against Morrison this week, as much as that pains me to say. But Galena, having just gotten beat up pretty good by Lena Winslow, I think that week 9 name is really going to be intriguing. Again, Elmwood Brimfield, I probably had higher hopes for in the Crystal Ball episode. They lose to Ottawa Marquette. That was probably a game I thought they were going to win. Now you got Macomb, a great team, and then Illini West, which is another 3-win team, but I think they're kind of on the other end. I think they're on the up, just like they were last year.
Yep.
Because Illini West has United this week, which I think they will win, and then Elmwood Brimfield in week 9. Spring Valley Hall has played well this year, but now they get Riverdale and Rock Ridge back-to-back. That's a tough slate. And Genoa Kingston, I believe they'll get to 4, but then having Dixon week 9, that is a tough matchup.
Yep. Anything else before we get in and talk some Western Big Six from Week 7? Look,
I got Havana. We
Yeah.
didn't talk about Havana. They've got South Fulton, so I think they'll get to 4, but then Rush Ministry in Week 9. I just don't see the Ducks winning that
I
one.
think Havana really needed that win against A-Town this past week, and we'll talk about the result there. But yeah, I think that they may fall short based on that result. So
if that's the case, let's see. That's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I think we're normally around the 22, 23 mark on teams that get in every year. I think we're going to get right there. I think we're already at 17.
Yeah.
I think we'll be right around 22, 23 that get in.
We like it. That's what we like. Give us something to talk about.
Job security.
That's right. All right, Mitch, let's get into the Western Big Six, talk about the week that was of Week 7, and look ahead to Week 8. Here we go. Here's the scores. Mitch, read us the finals.
All right, you had Quincy getting past Galesburg, 44-22. You had United Township getting back in the win column, a 48-21 win over Rock Island. Geneseo with a nice win, 31-10 over Sterling, and you had Moline getting the late forfeit against Alleman.
Yep. So, all right, United Township gets the bounce-back win, 48-21 over Rock Island. Panthers snap a 3-game losing streak. They get back on their path to the postseason, like we just mentioned. Isaiah Navarrete, great night for him. Good to see him excel here. 290 all-purpose yards for Rock Island. Nice night for quarterback Miles Deuster and wide receiver Evan Ellis. Deuster threw 15 for 27, 180 yards, 3 touchdowns, all to Ellis. So some positives here for Rock Island, but overall, the story is UT bouncing back and really, I think, setting themselves up to be playing. They hope to be their best football heading into a matchup with Moline.
Yeah, they certainly wanted some momentum. Again, snapping a 3-game losing streak on games that they had a lead in all 3, some sizable leads, and they just did not hang on. So good to have the Panthers back in the win column, doing some good things. Jonathan Drake had a good night for them as well. So, yep, playing well, or I should say played well in this game, getting back on the right track because they're going to need it against Moline in Week 8.
Yep. So Quincy is the winner, 44-22 over Galesburg. Blue Devils get to that 5th win. Like we mentioned, it was a bit of a slow start, but Hunter Schuckman eventually leads the way, 19 for 33, 331 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So you got to be happy if you're a Blue Devils fan that you really see Hunter Schuckman getting comfortable controlling this game after a slow start.
Yeah, absolutely. He has played so well this year and been able to distribute the ball. It's a different look offense for Quincy this year, but still bread and butter is slinging that ball through the air. So good win for Quincy, and they're going to be back in the playoffs.
Yep. Geneseo gets the win, 31-10 over Sterling. This is the game that I was at. We'll pull up some highlights, Mitch, so we can watch along.
Hey.
Let's get to the highlights. There we are.
Look at him.
So
that's a Greg Armstrong highlight if I've ever seen.
Credit on the opening shot. I got to rewind it back. That's my son on the opening shot. He got that. The team running, Geneseo running right out at him. So
did he get a white balance on the Sterling jerseys, or what did he use?
I think he probably used the sideline as I would instruct him. So
okay.
So no, looking at the Geneseo offense, I was really impressed with what they were able to do here. You see the pass there from Jackson McAvoy to Kai Weinzerl, and just the athlete that Weinzerl is. He can do it as a receiver. He can do it as as the running back as well. Geneseo recovered a fumble on Sterling's opening drive. They marched downfield and scored. It was 17-10 in the 3rd quarter, but the Leafs would pull away with 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns. Again, Kai Weinzerl leads the way with 201 all-purpose yards. Jackson McAvoy added a pair of rushing touchdowns, as well as Harrison Hill and Mark Nelms. There you see Kai Weinzerl breaking away down the sideline. Just a really impressive effort from him. And then the drive caps off with McAvoy punching it in from short yardage. So overall, this Geneseo defense really controlled what Sterling was able to do. We saw that kick return from Brady Hartz was the only, touchdown that Sterling was able to get. They also put a field goal in as well. So overall impressed with Geneseo, playing really well right now.
Yeah, and we talked to Coach Furlong on the instant relax like you talked about, and like, just really impressed with their defensive effort because Sterling had been coming in all of their wins. They had scored over 40 points, and as you just mentioned, they kept them out of the end zone with the offense on the field. So, and Wine-Zero is such a special player. I think he leads them in rushing, receiving, and tackles. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So, Geneseo is playing well. This was a big win for them. I think this will, certainly help them in their playoff seedings and guide them the rest of the way.
Yep. So, all right, let's look ahead at Week 8. Moline at United Township. That's the big one. You also have Rock Island at Galesburg, Alleman at Geneseo, and Quincy at Sterling. At this point, we've heard no official word either way, whether Alleman is or is not playing yet. So that's yet to be determined. Hopefully, they're back on the field. I think we all would agree that it's better for everybody if Alleman can get back on the field, if they're healthy and if they have, enough players to do it safely. So yet to be determined there, but for right now, it will be Geneseo hosting Alleman. I think that Quincy at Sterling game is very intriguing. Can Sterling bounce back and get the win at home? Quincy had a nice win there against Galesburg, but they did start a little slow. I think those two teams come in pretty evenly matched. And then the big one is Moline at United Township.
Yep, that one could very much determine who wins the Western Big Six. It could propel Moline to getting that solo spot. I think they would hold the tiebreaker over everybody after that. I think that Sterling Quincy game is the most intriguing. If Quincy can continue to pass and again, can Schuckman continue to look good? Can they get that sixth win? Certainly in the 6A or 7A playoffs, wherever they're going to fall, seeding is going to be pretty crucial for them, either to not have to play a top-notch CCL team or something, or go on a long road trip, which they probably won't be able to avoid no matter what. But every win is crucial for Quincy. But I think this is a big game for Sterling, too, sitting there at 4 wins. If they can get a win here and get a win in Week 9, it'll help their cause as well. But yeah, this could be when we see Moline get crowned. And again, if Geneseo doesn't play, that would give them a 6th win. If it's a forfeit, they'd be locked into the playoffs once again. I think they'll win no matter what, so they would have 6 wins regardless. But yeah, we're winding down here, but I think we're getting closer to maybe a coronation of Moline, unless United Township, which they could do. That United Township proves that they have the playmakers that could compete in this conference. Again, they had some close losses that didn't go their way, but they could. There is no doubt that they can play spoiler on Friday night.
Oh, I think, yeah, there's absolutely the talent there for this United Township team. We've talked about it all season, and even in losses, they were so close. And you don't like to see wins that you don't like to see, games that you gave away, right? That you couldn't quite close it out. But either way, those were competitive football games. And I think that we've had high hopes for United Township all season long. Those high hopes, the players haven't changed. The personnel's all still there. So I think it's going to be really interesting here to see if United Township can slow down Moline enough, hang around long enough, and make some plays, make some impact plays. And I'm intrigued by this matchup because I know that Moline's the favorite, but I think United Township comes in ready to make a statement.
Well, and how does Moline, how do they come out? Motions ran high on Thursday, didn't play on Friday. How did they spend their time on Friday? How did they handle their prep? Again, emotional on at the end of last week. So interested to see if they come out on fire, mad at the world, this or that. But I think more than anything, they'll be locked in like they normally are. Coach Morrissey in this program, they'll be ready.
Yep. I think both these teams will come in ready because I think that, United Township got the jump start they needed in that win over Rock Island. And I think Moline they're just ready to go. They've been rock and rolling up until this last week where they didn't play, but I think they've been playing at a high level. So that's an interesting matchup to get into. So All right, let's take a quick break. We'll bring in Ty Taylor from WRMJ when we're breaking down the Three Rivers Athletic Conference and the big game coming up in that conference. We'll bring in Ty Taylor and his expertise. We'll be right back after the break.
This is Dan Pearson of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Our FCA team of staff, board, and volunteers is pleased to support View from the West with Greg and Mitch. Our Northwest Illinois FCA team is 3 teams in 1, serving coaches and athletes in the Three Rivers, Northern Illinois, and Greater Peoria areas, all with schools covered by View from the West. For more information, email me at danpearson@fca.org. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
Hey there, local high school football fans. This is Sean Considine, a Byron Tiger and Iowa Hawkeye alumni, and now an LPL financial advisor. I'm passionate about high school football because it's the purest form of the game where communities come together. You can find me in my Byron office until I run off the football practice. I'm happy to talk about football or the markets. I'll leave that up to you. I want to wish everyone across Illinois a safe, successful, and memorable high school football season.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC.
Hey, this is Brett Bielma, the head coach of the Fighting Illini from Prophetstown, Illinois. You're listening to the View from the West podcast.
All right, time to talk some Three Rivers Athletic Conference football. Mitch, if we're talking Three Rivers, we got to bring in the heavy hitters this week because there's at least one very big-time game. So we're welcoming in Ty Taylor from WRMJ. Ty, thanks for being here. An exciting week as we move towards the most exciting time of the year in the playoffs.
Heavy hitter might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but yes, I am excited to be here. Big game, of course, headlining the track in week 8 with Rockridge and Monmouth Roseville, which we'll get into. And like you said, super exciting as we start to kind of be able to look into the playoff picture a little bit more clear every week, it feels like.
Yep. All right, well, let's no more waiting around. Let's get to the scores from week 7 and then look ahead at everything that comes with week 8. So, Mitch, go ahead and read us the scores, the results from week 7.
All right, our last week of divisional games here. So starting in the Mississippi, you had Monmouth Roseville completing the back-to-back Mississippi championships with a 57-14 win over Hall. You had Girard getting back-to-back wins with a 52-7 win over Kewanee. And Princeton beat Mendota 48-10. On the Rock side, it was Rock Ridge getting the Rock crown for the 3rd time in 4 years, beating Mercer County 61-24. You had Erie Prophetstown scoring 40 unanswered against Orient to win 40-14. And then Newman got by Riverdale late 24-14 in that one.
So there you go. There's the results from week 7. Looking ahead at week 8, we'll get to week 8 in a second here because it's a big-time game. Before we go any further, Three Rivers Athletic Conference coverage brought to you by Simulation Sports in Monmouth, Illinois. Visit thesimulationsports.com to book your golf or batting cage time today. So, all right, well, before we talk about the matchups in week 8, Ty, I'll start with you, and give me one game here that kind of caught your attention. And I know we had 2 division champions crowned, and you could go to one of those if you want, but give me a game or a team that stuck out to you.
Well, I think for me first, it would be Erie Prophetstown based on, just like you said, the way they were able to kind of rally against Orient. Not that they got down by too many points early, but just the way they really were able to kind of battle back in that game after falling behind early. It was a game where you knew Orient coming in was playing basically with everything on the line in terms of playoff hopes. So to be able to score 40 unanswered points in that game, like you said, Mitch, really impressive performance, I think, for them to be able to punch their ticket. And then kind of what we saw with Monmouth Roseville and Rock Ridge, like you said, clinching the divisional championships. I think we kind of expected both of those teams to roll in week 7, and they both were able to take care of business. Now Rock Ridge got off to a little bit of a slow start. Mercer County hung around in that game for, I think, longer than most people expected on Friday, but eventually Rock Ridge was able to pull away. I think they scored 9 touchdowns on 11 drives, and the last drive of the night, Rock Ridge had it within the 10-yard line and kneeled it out to run the clock out to win the game. So they probably could have scored a 10th touchdown if they really wanted to. But I do think, the thing that's exciting as we look ahead to week 8 is obviously the Rockridge Monmouth Roseville game where, preseason we looked at that week 1 game between Newman and Princeton and thought maybe that was the game between the two, favorites in the division, but it ends up being Rockridge and Monmouth Roseville in week 8. Both teams, undefeated, both teams state ranked. It's a nice kind of playoff preview, I guess you could say, with a pair of, really high level teams going at it in week 8.
Yeah. Well, let's talk through it all, Mitch. Let's go into the Track Mississippi, talk through those games, get a little bit of detail here. We'll get into the Track Rock, and then we'll certainly get into that game. Rockridge and Monmouth Roseville, that carries the headlines here in the Three Rivers. But give us some of the, names and details we need to know starting in the Track Mississippi.
So on that side, we had 3 games, as mentioned. Let's start in Sherrard and Kewanee there. Great win for Sherrard, again, 52-7 there, 352 total yards of offense for Sherrard. Harrison Curry had 2 touchdowns. Carter Brown ran for 1 and threw for 1 as well. Landon Clark, Wes Easley, Cooper Thomas, Emery Partlow all added touchdowns. So it was a really, really good night there for Sherrard. Javon Jones had 2 picks, a fumble recovery, and a touchdown on the defensive side. So I believe this one was close early, and then Sherrard just really blew it open.
Yeah. Ty, I wanted to mention, I listened to your interview with Coach McGuire on WRMJ on Sportsline. Really cool to hear the story about the coming home and ringing the victory bell in Sherrard. And, to kind of paraphrase him, he said they got home, they got off the bus, and he was kind of busy being a coach, right? Putting stuff away, kind of just doing his thing. And somebody must have came into the locker room and said, hey, you better get out there. Like, it's cool. And the players were waiting for him to ring the bell first, which I think is a huge sign of respect for kind of the coach and the program that he's brought, the kind of a culture that he's brought into this Sherrard program. I think it's important to note that every team, every program kind of gauges success differently. And this season didn't go the way Sherrard wanted to, but man, they had a really great moment there. And it felt like, it's just those kids deserve it, right? Any team deserves to feel that, success of fighting through it, coming away with the win at the end of the night. It was a really cool interview, I thought.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story, and it was, really cool hearing him talk about that because he really took over the program in a spot where they were, needing somebody where, their previous head coach had resigned. I think on April 30th was the date. And, the program for the last 10, 15 years hasn't had a whole lot of success. I don't think they had any teaching openings in the school district at the time of the resignation of Coach Johnson. So you knew it was going to be really challenging to find somebody to take over that job. So I have a lot of respect for Coach McGuire coming out of retirement. He hadn't coached in 25 years, taking over that program, which he had served as, I think, a interim assistant principal for them last school year. And he had just said, basically, I fell in love with the school district and the kids. So, of course, when they needed somebody, I wanted to step up and help them. But, yeah, I've heard nothing but great things from everybody over at Sherrard about Coach McGuire. And for them, to win the game with all the adversity they faced this year, they had to forfeit the game earlier in the year against Princeton. A lot of sickness, a lot of injuries have kind of plagued them throughout the year. So I was really happy for those kids. Like you said, it's something that it felt like if things maybe went a little bit differently earlier in the year, they could have had maybe 2 or 3 wins coming into this week. Instead, they're 0-6, and they get to kind of take out all of that frustration and finally get a win where, like I said, it felt like they probably could have had a couple at least beforehand if they were able to stay healthy. So really cool story. Happy for them. And, like you said, every program gauges success differently. And for them to be able to get a win the way they did with all that's gone on this year for them, really happy for those kids for sure.
Yep. I will say that, on the WRMJ picks, I took Kewanee and assistant coach
there.
Assistant coach Jeff Schmalbach made sure to text me Friday night and say that I picked poorly. So he made note. And the worst part about it is, so I make the pick, I lose, Sherrard gets the win, and now I blow my 1-game lead I had on you guys. So now are we all dead even going into week 8? Man, that's some craziness. It's gonna be That's going to be some fun track picks for the next couple weeks, boys. Here we go. Buckle up. So All right, well, speaking of one of the games that's going to be really hard to pick, Monmouth-Roseville and Rock Ridge, but Monmouth-Roseville gets the 57-14 win over Hall. So the Titans go back-to-back in the track Mississippi, clinching the title once again. Jeremy Adolphson, nice enough to join us on the Instant Reacts podcast on Friday night. Go check that out if you haven't heard it already. He was already rocking the back-to-back championship merch. So I got to get him our addresses, boys, so we can get one of those in the mail, because he was spot on, man. He didn't waste any time. He already had the shirts ready to roll. The Titans had 492 yards rushing in this game, including Nick Houston rushing for a new school record, 282 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns on the ground. But wait, there's more. Houston also threw a touchdown pass. He had a receiving touchdown as well. And on the defensive side of the ball, 12 tackles, 3 tackles for loss. He's also 8 away from breaking the all-time school record on tackles for loss as well. So, Mitch, I think when we start reading through all of that, I think there's only one thing left to say, or one thing left to hear. So there it is. The chime sounds. Mitch, our View from the West Breedlove's Player of the Week for Week 7, Nick Houston. What a performance by the Titans running back.
Yeah, well, and we talked about at the beginning of this show, kind of the nominees and all of the great performances in Week 7, because this was really, in my memory of us doing this show, maybe the hardest decision we had to make in terms of Player of the Week, because we had so many good performances. But when you look back at everything that went into this, a school record, 5 touchdowns, scoring 3 different ways, being a menace on the defensive side of the ball. Oh, and by the way, back-to-back conference championships, just everything rolled into one. Nick Houston has had an unbelievable season. I'm sure I can think of at least one week where, he was probably the runner-up for this award. And so it's only fitting that amongst, again, so many great performances, that Nick Houston is the Week 7 Breedlove's Player of the Week. So congratulations to Nick. We will make sure we coordinate with Coach Adolphson to get the proper address for the school, and to make sure that you get the entire box of goodies that you're about to get from Breedlove's, and a very well-deserving recipient this week.
Yeah, this was a really hard week to choose, but Mitch, I'm a sucker. I'm a big fan of the trifecta there. When you run one in, you throw a touchdown, and you receive a touchdown. That's just, it's too much fun. And within the context, like you said, within the context of what Monmouth-Roseville did on Friday night, I think it all leads to a Player of the Week type performance. So, like you said, congratulations to Nick Houston. So, one more game in the track Mississippi. Princeton gets the 48-10 win over Mendota. After holding only a 14-10 lead at halftime, Casey Etheridge scores on the first play of the second half, 65 yards for the touchdown. That gives the Tigers the 21-10 lead. The Tigers went on to outscore the Trojans 34-0 in the second half. Etheridge, another great night, 224 yards, 4 touchdowns. So he leads the way. Princeton gets the win there. All right, Mitch, should we circle back to the track Rock? Give us the the totals from Rock Ridge and Mercer County.
I'll give you the totals, but I'll divert to Ty on this one. He was calling this game. But, the Rockets clinched the track Rock for, again, at the third time in 4 years. Colin Schweigen, a name we call every single week for good reason. 10-16, 248 yards, 65 yards rushing. I believe I'm going to be correct when I say it this time. 6 touchdowns, 5 passing and 1 rushing. I do know that puts him at 30 on the year, so just 2 shy of the school record he set himself just last season, which I fully anticipate he will break and blow out of the water. So a fantastic game from Rock Ridge. Again, I will let Ty kind of explain how the night went, because Merco played pretty well. Maybe could have been their best game of the season, even in a losing effort. That they, at least it sounded like they played a lot better. But for Rock Ridge to, it's been such a good season for them, and for them to culminate and finally get this conference crown, it's well deserved.
Yeah, I agree, Mitch. I've watched Mercer County every week, and I said it many times, like it was 100%, I think, their best 4-quarter effort of the season from, the first quarter to the final whistle, basically, because just, the week before they played Newman, and it felt like really the effort level wasn't there, and that's something that we talked about with Mercer County head coach Fred Lucas postgame last week against Newman, and he said that was kind of the main thing they talked to the kids about is just, we have to give better effort than we're giving right now. I know that, the postseason is something that we're going to be able to achieve this year, but you have to play harder than you did that week. And I mean, they came out on Friday against Rock Ridge and didn't back down. They were really strong up front, almost won the battle up front, I think, in the first half, especially. Now, of course, just the talent is going to, kind of set itself apart over 48 minutes, but Mercer County had that game, even though they lost by 37 points. I mean, they had it within 9 in the third quarter after they scored on their first drive of the third. They hung around, and like I said, I was really impressed just with the way they kind of battled and didn't back down in that game because of the way the year has gone for Mercer County and the way the year has gone for Rock Ridge. It would have been really easy for those kids, for the Golden Eagles, just kind of fold and come into that game and say, hey, it's been a challenging year and we're playing a great team. We're probably going to get rolled, but that wasn't the attitude they had. So a lot of respect to them for that. And I do think, and we talked about this with Coach Lucas too, post game on Friday night, like having that rivalry with Mercer County and Rock Ridge, which we didn't have for so long with Mercer County, or I should say Alito at the time, leaving the Olympic. I mean, that game, the last 2 years, the first 2 years, has been played in the regular season since basically whatever it was, 2005 or 2006. I mean, that game feels really special when the two teams get on the field and play each other, even though, maybe the talent the last 2 seasons when they've played hasn't been similar. They've been really competitive games, especially in the first half in both. So it was just a fun night. But on the Rock Ridge side of things, they just had too much, I think, offensive firepower for Mercer County to be able to try to, hang with them. The Golden Eagles have struggled defensively all year. And like I said off the top of the segment, Rock Ridge scored 9 touchdowns in 11 drives, was forced to punt just one time. So they're just so fun to watch offensively with all of kind of the talent they have at their skill position spots, with Schwei, again, like we talked about, who just scores like, at least 4 touchdowns every week, it feels like. And the Steel Boys, Owen and Liam, Chase Wheatley, and then the running backs, Thomas Sowers and Tanner Dyer, just such hard runners. And they just come at you in so many different ways, and they have so many different kids who can make plays, and it feels like they can score from like anywhere on the field at any time. So that's kind of how the game went in the second half. Rock Ridge had 3 one-play touchdown drives and really was able to pull away. But like you said, Mitch, Mercer County's effort was awesome, and it gave me more confidence for them the final 2 weeks of the season, for them to hopefully maybe be able to pull out a win, maybe in Week 9 against Mendota, if they can put a good effort together on the road.
Yeah. Well, speaking of teams that I feel like are getting better as the season moves on, how about Erie Prophetstown? They get the win 40-14 over Orion. Like we mentioned, they score 40 unanswered after they were down 7-0 early. So that brings them the, all but securing a postseason bid here for the second year in a row. 5 touchdowns on the evening from our defending player of the week, Keegan Winkler. They can get the automatic bid with a win this coming week over Mendota. So nice win there for the Panthers. You also had Newman 24-14 over Riverdale. A battle there. I mean, just a really classic Three Rivers showdown here between two really talented football teams. Newman comes away with the win. They clinch a postseason bid with their 6th win of the year. Evan Bushman, 325 yards, 3 touchdowns. John Rosie, 4 receptions for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Renner Rosengren with another touchdown reception. So what I think is interesting is we've seen throughout the course of the year, depending on what the defense is showing, this Newman team can be versatile, Mitch. They can run the ball if they need to. They're pretty deep at running back, and Evan Bushman can throw the ball. He's got some talented receivers to spread you out a little bit too.
Yeah, and I don't know when the last time, unless I'm just really forgetting something, that Newman had this level of a passing threat, I guess. And that was something that Coach LeMay has talked about even from the beginning of this year. He knew he had a third-year starter coming back in Bushman, a guy who can sling it and who can distribute the ball many, many ways. And that's just going to support the run game even more, which has always been Newman's bread and butter. So this was a tight game, like you said. I think it was 16-14 in the third, maybe even in the fourth. And Riverdale had missed a 2-point conversion to tie it, and then Riverdale added a late touchdown to give some separation there. But a great win for Newman. And a good effort from Riverdale that we've come to expect. They're still sitting at 4 wins, and they've got an interesting game with Hall this week before Sherrard in Week 9. So I still do believe Riverdale gets into the playoffs. A performance like this, even in a losing effort, I think will go a long way. And even if you go the week before, falling to Erie Prophetstown by 6, the Rams have been in some tight games. Just need to kind of get a little over the hump there.
Yep. All right. Well, you alluded to it. Let's talk about Week 8. Kewanee goes on the road to Newman on Saturday at 1 o'clock. Mendota at Erie Prophetstown. Monmouth Roseville at Rock Ridge. Princeton at Mercer County. Sherrard at Orion. Hall at Riverdale. Before we get to, the de facto track championship, that's going to be the big, source of discussion here. But yeah, I do kind of want to talk a little bit about this Hall going on the road to Riverdale. It feels like Hall's been playing better. You look early in the year, and Orion beat them earlier in the season. But as you look at results down the way, Ty, don't you feel like Hall has been improving? And I think that this is a game that's interesting to watch between Hall and Riverdale.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really impressed the way that Hall, they hung in there against Princeton, and I think that was like a 9-point game in the fourth quarter. I think they ended up losing by 2 or 3 scores. I don't remember the final score off the top of my head, but they were in that game. And if you remember last year, Riverdale was coming into this very week, Week 8 against Hall, with a chance to get to the postseason if they took care of business against Hall and then beat Sherrard in Week 9. And last year, Hall beat them at a game that Hall hosted. So while I do believe Riverdale is a favorite in this game, it's not like an automatic win for them for sure. I think, both teams are basically playing with playoff hopes on the line, you could say, per se. Now, Riverdale has a much clearer path with Sherrard in Week 9. But Hall, with 4 losses, they have to win this week. So if there are like any, tricks they have up their sleeve, you could probably see them use them this week. So I expect that to be a very competitive game because, like you said, as Hall has progressed this season, I think they probably, you could say, are the most improved team from like Week 1 to now into Week 8. So yeah, that's a score for sure. I know everyone's going to be following the Rockridge Monmouth Roseville game, but I think that's the game I'm probably, second most interested in this week is that Hall and Riverdale matchup.
Yeah. I will say, we've talked about maybe Hall improving and playing close with Princeton, but throughout the season, this Riverdale team, you look at, like we just talked about, ends up being a 10-point difference in Newman, but I think they really fought through this one. This game was close throughout. You look at the week before, obviously it came down to the final seconds of the game where Riverdale falls short to Erie Prophetstown. So I think this Riverdale team, despite 2 losses in a row, is playing at a really high level as well. So I want to make sure to point that out, that I think that's what makes me interested in this matchup, is I think both teams are playing well, even despite Riverdale losing 2 in a row. Mitch, what other games here before we get to Monmouth Roseville Rock Ridge? You have anything else you want to talk about before we get to the big one?
Yeah, I think there's 3 that are toss-ups in a sense. Certainly the Monmouth Roseville Rock Ridge game, certainly the Hall Riverdale game that we just talked about. How about Sherrard at Orion? Sherrard's kind of coming in with some momentum. Orion has the playmakers to get these wins. They just can't seem to get there. So, we're going to be picking this game this week. So I don't want to tip anything, and I'm not even sure I've made that decision yet. But just looking at those 2 teams, I feel like that's an interesting game, right?
I think so, because that's a game too, like we were talking about Mercer County and Rock Ridge earlier, that Sherrard and Orion, the schools are 7 or 8 miles apart, I think, in terms of the actual school buildings themselves. And that's a game that I feel like every year is really competitive, where the schools really want to beat each other. And again, we talked about Sherrard. They could have won three or four, probably two or three games, I should say, coming into that game against Kewanee last week before they got their first win. And the week before, I mean, they battled with Monmouth Roseville. They had that just a 2-possession game in the third quarter. So I think Sherrard is another one of those teams that has, progressed and gotten a lot better as the year has went on. So I agree with you, Mitch. I think that, is a game that has the potential to be like a 1-score or 2-score game coming down to the wire. So while there are games, of course, with a lot more on the line, I think that one is interesting and going to be a challenging one to predict as well.
Well, speaking of impossible matchups to predict, undefeated Monmouth Roseville going on the road to undefeated Rock Ridge. It's the Three Rivers Athletic Championship game here in Week 8. This is how you want it drawn up. When you see the schedules play out, you want a game with this much meaning to it heading into Week 8. Mitch, I turn to you for your opening thoughts here.
Oh, it's tough. I've been looking at just both of the teams' schedules, and certainly there is some common opponents. Merco is one, Princeton is one, and Princeton's probably the one I look at the best. And certainly that was in Week 2 for Rock Ridge. And I think Rock Ridge is a different team than they were there in Week 2. But if you remember that game, it took a pretty miraculous comeback from Rock Ridge to win that. And I'm not selling that effort short by any means. My point being that it was shown that a team like Princeton, a run-heavy team, a good back, a good quarterback, if they're firing all cylinders, they were getting the best of that Rock Ridge defense. Now, again, that was 6 weeks ago. And you have seen Rock Ridge's defense really tighten up. And you look at the Erie Prophetstown game, or you look at the Newman game, where those teams are maybe more either a dual threat quarterback or a run first kind of mentality on those offenses. They stepped up to the plate. So now in comes, but okay, to preface that, I don't think they've played a team like Monmouth Roseville. The flip side of that, Monmouth Roseville has a weaker strength of schedule than Rock Ridge does. Rock Ridge has faced 1, 2, 3, 4 teams with a winning record. Monmouth Roseville has faced one. Monmouth Roseville has not been challenged once this year. I believe that is due in part because they are very, very good, and that style of play is just punishing on the defenses and on the teams that they play. But again, if you compare who each team has played, I would say Rock Ridge has had the harder schedule. How does that factor into picking this game? I don't think I'm going to weigh that much into it. I did listen to the Monmouth Roseville game this week. Sorry, Ty. I listened to Monmouth Roseville, and that was, and we talked about it on the Instant Reacts, that was the most complete game they have played top to bottom. Coach Adolphson agreed with that assessment too. So they're coming in on all cylinders, and I think it's important for them to get some revenge from last year. Rock Ridge won this matchup last year. It didn't have the same consequences last year. Not that there's any consequences. This is a fake track championship, but I think it's important for Monmouth Roseville to finish what they started. I'm leaning one way, and maybe I'm tipping my hat here, but this game will be awesome. I mean, what other way can you put it? And it's exactly what we hoped for. 2 undefeated representatives from their divisions. They get to meet up in Week 9, and we get to have this, fake track championship. But for both teams in Week 8 heading into the playoffs, I think it's going to do them well, whoever wins and whoever loses. It's a great matchup, and I cannot wait. This will be the one I'm watching. This will be the one I'm following or listening to. Ty, if you're calling this one, or whoever at WRMJ is going to be calling it, I'll be listening to it, because this is a tough one to predict, and I just really can't wait to see what happens.
I'm hoping I'm watching it from the sidelines through my camera, up in my hand. That would be amazing. We're going to try to make that work. But Ty, I think, like Mitch mentioned, it's going to be a great matchup. It's a showdown between 2 great teams, but what's really intriguing is 2 very different styles. And I think that, both of them come in with a lot of talent, and they go about things a little bit differently. That really makes this matchup intriguing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing that I was going to say is that the way the two teams play is what makes this, I think, such a fun matchup. And kind of to echo what Mitch was saying, Rock Ridge struggled a little bit last week against Mercer County, which runs out of the wing T primarily. Now, Mercer County, I think, has more speed than Monmouth Roseville does. But like I said, when we were talking about the game last week, it felt like they were able to kind of hold their own against Rock Ridge up front, which Monmouth Roseville, of course, is going to be the biggest challenge that Rock Ridge has seen along the offensive and defensive lines all season. And I think definitely, though, over the years, Rock Ridge has really prided itself on being a team that, stops the run, and teams that are run heavy have traditionally struggled to score the ball consistently and move the ball consistently against Rock Ridge. And especially like when you look at when Monmouth Roseville has the ball, it's going to be so fun to kind of watch that matchup with their huge and physical and strong offensive line against Rock Ridge's like defensive front, which they're not overly big, but they're really fast and really athletic, and they're strong in their own right too. But that Rock Ridge defense is just so fast, and they've kind of made a reputation of taking like those kind of smaller, quicker, stronger type wrestling kids like Jude Finch in years past that play, basically right over the center or along the defensive line, that are smaller kids but get off the ball and can kind of get into the backfield with their quickness and that hand fighting and like low center of gravity with the wrestling background. So that's the thing that I think I'm going to be watching for the most, is when Monmouth Roseville has the ball, how Rock Ridge is able to defend them, because while Rock Ridge is kind of undersized up front, definitely against Monmouth Roseville they are in this specific matchup. Their linebackers are just fantastic players, like Ryan Lower and Schweigen's playing defense like we've talked about this year. Thomas Sowards is a heck of a inside linebacker for Rock Ridge too. And then like the Steel Boys, who kind of play safety / walk down outside linebackers, that they're such physical and fast players too. So that's, I think, my most the matchup, I should say, that I'm looking forward to the most is when Monmouth Roseville has the ball. But then on the other side of things, I mean, I don't know Monmouth Roseville has really played, I know they haven't played an offense as explosive as Rock Ridge is. And, off the top of my head, really like the only main spread it out team they've played, I think, so far that does it consistently is Orion, which was all the way back in week 2. So I think for sure Monmouth Roseville's secondary will be tested the most that it has all year, and and without a doubt, this is the best dual threat quarterback that Monmouth Roseville has seen all year, with just the ability that Schweigen has both to throw it, but then the way he's able to run it, and not just on design runs, but when he gets out of the pocket and is kind of extending plays. I mean, I think that's when he is the most dangerous, because at that point you don't really have a defender accounting for him. He just is on the run, and he's so fast and has those long strides, and he's big. And as he's gotten older, I think he's become so much harder to tackle. Like, he breaks so many tackles, and so do Rock Ridge's 2 running backs, Dye and Sowards. So the game, there's so many parts of it that are super interesting. And like Mitch was talking about too, Rock Ridge winning it last year, and really the game that flipped that game around for Rock Ridge, they returned a kick for a touchdown, and I think early in the second half to put them up for good. So it's a game that I absolutely think will come down to the wire. They're 2 fantastic teams who I think each have chances to, make pretty deep postseason runs in their own right and in their own respective classes, with Rock Ridge heading into 2A and Monmouth Roseville in 3A. So yeah, like you said, Greg, it's a game that, this late in the season, it's everything you want in a game, between 2 teams that are high level. So should be a lot of fun. Great crowd, 2 local schools going at it. What's better than that, man?
Yeah, should be an amazing atmosphere at Rock Ridge. And, you guys both kind of said everything that I think, stands out to me. I think I talked a few weeks ago when it was Rock Ridge versus Newman, and I looked at who's the best athlete on the field, and it was, Cullen Schweigen. And I think that a lot of games that he goes into, you can safely say he's the best athlete on the field. And Ty, to your point, Jeremy Adolphson talked about it this week, that, stopping Cullen Schweigen on design plays is hard enough, but then when things start to break down, that's where he really becomes special and makes some plays in connection with his wide receivers or with his running backs. So I think it's going to be a challenge for Monmouth Roseville to see if they can keep up with Schweigen when things start to break down. When there's a little bit of chaos on the field, can their athletes on Monmouth Roseville's side make the plays to diffuse the athleticism and the speed of Rock Ridge? And on the other side, it's obviously how can Rock Ridge's line on both sides of the ball handle the power, just that size and strength of Monmouth Roseville. It's a great matchup. It's really intriguing. Go ahead, Mitch.
I think it'll be one on Rock Ridge's defense. If they can make Monmouth Roseville uncomfortable, Monmouth Roseville has proven that they're going to set up the run to have a trick pass or just something that you're not going to expect them to throw in a situation. Can Monmouth Roseville beat Rock Ridge in the air? I don't know. I don't think they haven't been in that situation where they have to rely on the pass. Mm-hmm. They can throw it. They just don't do it a lot. Yep. Whereas Rock Ridge, they're set up for whatever the game's going to throw at them on the offensive side. I think they can beat you on the run. They can beat you through the air. The question remains is if Monmouth Roseville, if their run does get shut down, which no one has done because it's pretty hard to do, if they are in that situation that they have to throw, can they do it? And that's an unknown.
Yeah. So I'll say we're not going to make picks on this podcast because it's a tease ahead. You got to go check out the article on WRMJ Friday morning. That's where the picks will be revealed. Mitch, we got some people on social media already kind of asking because we've kind of tipped our hand a little bit in the crystal ball episodes. So if people want to go back and dig it up, they can find what we said there.
I am so ready to not even remember what I said. I'll go against what I said. I don't care.
Well, that's the thing is I think like I could flip on a dime and just make the opposite pick just kind of on a gut instinct. But we already had Ethan on X asking if we wanted to put a wager on it, put a little friendly bet on it because he thinks we're both picking Monmouth Roseville. So, he's a Rock Ridge guy.
We could all pick Rock Ridge. I don't know.
That's Yep. So I guess the point of this is you got to go to WRMJ.com, of course, on Friday morning and see who we picked and see what's going to lead me back to my 1 or 2 game advantage again. I gotta get my lead back, boys.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. People need to watch that because, like you said, we're all 3 tied now, and there are, as Mitch was talking about earlier, there are multiple games this week that feel like they're kind of toss-ups, and I think there are a few next week in Week 9 they're that way too. And then we got the playoffs to get through. So, man, I think honestly, what's more intriguing than Rockridge, Monmouth, Roseville is how we do in the 6 games this week, us 3. I think that's what everyone's going to be trying to follow Friday night.
No doubt about it.
What's the record? Is it 35-5 or something? What are we at?
You know what? I think I have it right over here. Let me see. I thought we were around there. I believe we are now 35-6, all of us. Yes.
Okay.
There we go. There we go. So tie.
We didn't get credit for, even though we all were picking Princeton, which we should. I guess I should have probably given us credit for that anyway. But
yeah. So Ty, will you? Can we go through these picks live on the Instant Reacts on Friday night? Can you join us live to go through how we did then? Update the standings.
I will absolutely be here Friday night, and we can have a live. Standing scoreboard update. We can move it's like Fenway Park out on the Green Monster. We can move the standing board around.
I love it. All right.
Well, I imagine we'll have the winning coach on that episode as well.
Yeah, we'll have to get that in the works for sure.
So I'm going to assume that
all right, well, Ty.
I will say real quick before you let me go, I'm going to think that all 3 of us probably aren't going to make the same pick just because of how close of a game we expect that to be. So whoever the winning coach is probably have the chance to dunk on at least one of us probably. So that's always fun.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
No doubt about it. All right, well, that'll be fun. Ty, thanks so much for being here, for joining us and breaking it all down. It's going to be a great week and leading into a great playoff season. So we'll talk again Friday night.
Can't wait, man. Let's do it. I hope Stock's here.
Oh, we'll get him in. We'll get him in, no doubt about it.
When it comes to quality, convenient pizza, Godfather's Pizza in Silvis has you covered. Featuring a beautiful dine-in area, delivery, and a carry-out window. Godfather's Pizza is that pizza you grew up with, not a convenience store. You see, at Godfather's Pizza, the dough is made fresh daily. That mozzarella cheese is shredded fresh and never frozen. And those toppings are abundantly piled high, each and every time. Locally owned and operated since 2010, Godfathers is a huge supporter of local athletes right here in the Quad Cities. So come on by and check them out at 1211 Avenue of the Cities in Silvis. Order online at godfathers.com and reunite with that same delicious pizza you grew up with.
Welcome back. Let's get into the Big Northern Conference. Our coverage of the Big Northern brought to you by Byron Wealth Management. Stop by and talk to Sean today about financials or football. We'll leave that up to you. All right, Mitch, here's the scores from Week 7 in the BNC. Give us the results.
All right, you had Byron getting a 55-7 win over Genoa Kingston. Dixon defeated Winnebago 50-15. Stillman Valley with a close win, 21-15 over Oregon. You had North Boone defeating Rockford Lutheran 55-0. And in the out-of-conference game, IVC defeated Rock Falls 28-0.
Yep. So we'll start up top of the standings. Byron 55-7 over Genoa Kingston. Caden Considine, 13 carries, 328 yards, 3 touchdowns rushing, 2 catches for 25 yards and a touchdown. Andrew Talbert, 3 total touchdowns, 2 of them passing, and most of all of that coming in the first half. So this Byron Tigers team really took control of this one, never looked back. On the Genoa Kingston side, Blake Ides and Cody Cravata, names we've become familiar with, connected on a 51-yard pass for Genoa Kingston's only score in that one. Speaking of offenses producing at a high level and getting it done in a short amount of time, how about Dixon? Mitch, give us the results on the Dixon Dukes. They continue to impress, and all in one quarter.
Right. Well, that was really how the game started. Landon Carnegie, 8 carries. This is on the game. I don't want to say how much he had. I believe the 5 touchdowns in the first quarter is actually correct, but 250 yards on 8 carries, 5 touchdowns. They built a 35-0 lead in that first quarter, but it was Winnebago snapping the Dukes' shutout streak.
Yeah.
They found some success in the air. Junior quarterback Caden Langhoff was 13-24 for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. But, regardless, a great win for Dixon. This is a tremendous, tremendous team. Again, Landon Carnegie is electric. Every time he has the ball, it's such a pleasure to read these stat lines and see the highlights between Carnegie and Considine every week. 2 great backs, 2 great wins for both of their teams as they are rolling into the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, 2 equally matched teams, and we thought it would be a good matchup, was Stillman Valley getting the 21-15 win over Oregon. This game, we thought it'd be close, and it lived up to the hype. Give us the details on this one, Mitch.
Yeah, it really did. This was a great win for Stillman Valley to hang in and really come back. Oregon was out to a 9-0 lead before Stillman got on the board in the mid-second quarter, and it was 9-6. But Oregon punched right back, and they went up 15-6. So they took that lead into the half. But Stillman came out of the half ready to go. They scored 13 unanswered to win 21-15. There was a chance Oregon was gonna put it away. A penalty kind of set them back. Then a fumble happened, and Stillman Valley put together a long drive. So good on Stillman Valley. They are still in the fight. This is obviously a tough conference to pick up wins, but this was a much-needed one for their playoff hopes.
Yeah, this Stillman Valley team was one that we had questions coming into this season, and I think that this win over an Oregon team that we've been pretty high on, that's one of those kind of, you see, that progress, and you see this team getting better as the season moves along. That's a nice win for Stillman Valley here.
And it's just a typical kind of game where they're just putting together 4-yard, 5-yard plays, just chunk plays and chewing clock. So good win for Stillman Valley, as we just talked about. Now they're sitting at 4 wins. I think they've got winnable games the next 2 weeks, and we'll see them in the playoffs.
Yep. Okay, we'll talk about that. One of those games in a minute here. North Boone gets the win 55-0 over Rockford Lutheran. Vikings back in the win column after dropping their last 3. They need to somehow find a way to upset, I would say, Stillman or Byron in the final 2 weeks to qualify. But like we just talked about, the North Boone playing well, Stillman Valley playing well. That's an intriguing Week 8 matchup. We'll talk about it in 1 second here. IVC gets the win in the non-conference over Rock Falls. So let's look at Week 8, Mitch. And that one right there, North Boone at Stillman Valley. You have Winnebago at Oregon. Genoa Kingston at Rock Falls, Dixon at Streeter in a non-conference game, and Rockford Lutheran at Byron. I think we start with the North Boone Stillman Valley game, and Winnebago and Oregon is interesting too, because the Oregon needs a win here.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I like the way that Stillman Valley has been playing. You know, North Boone gets back on the winning track. Rockford Lutheran having a pretty tough year. I think when North Boone has kind of been up against their tougher opponents, they just aren't the same team. Whereas Stillman Valley has shown that they can put up a fight late into a game against good teams. So I do like Stillman Valley in that game. I also like Oregon in their matchup against Winnebago. Like we said, Winnebago found some success in the air against Byron, but I do think Oregon is a very, very solid playoff group, and I expect them to get the win. I think Genoa Kingston will get back on the winning streak. They've had a tough year. You know, they've had some close losses, but they've played well. They'll get a win here against Rock Falls. And Dixon and Byron, I expect them to win as well. So we're getting closer, I believe, to the inevitable Byron being the Big Northern champion in this conference, but still some things to shake out. Still some teams fighting for playoff spots below them.
Yeah, yep, no doubt about it. All right, well, we'll definitely be talking, Big Northern in the next couple weeks, because I think there's some teams that can make a playoff run here, the teams we just talked about. So I'm excited for that. All right, should we get into the Lincoln Land Conference, get into the LLC? We'll start on the large side of things, pull up the scores, and Mitch, you can read us the results.
Okay, you had Macomb getting the 42-19 win over Knoxville. West Hancock, a 62-6 winner over LVC. Illini West with the late win over Bureau Valley, 28-20. And then you had Elmwood Brimfield falling to Ottawa Marquette, 51-6.
All right, so you said Macomb punches their ticket to the postseason. They win 42-19 over Knoxville. That's their 6th win of the year. Caden Nupp was perfect passing, 8 for 8, 165 yards and a pair of touchdowns. Drew Watson, his top target, picking up 67 receiving yards and a touchdown. On the ground, Drake May rushes for 135 yards, 3 scores. I've really been impressed with this Macomb team. They fell short, a tough loss to Farmington, but other than that, they continue to get the job done here.
Yeah, and they'll be back in the playoffs. I've really been impressed with Caden Nupp all year. Like you said, it's super efficient in this one. So a great win for Macomb. And yeah, Knoxville still sitting at 4 wins. We just talked about it a minute ago. A tough Ottawa Marquette team playing against them this week in week 8. And then Stark County, which started hot, maybe cooling off a little bit. That could be the game that determines. Stark County should be in at 5 already. They're 5-2. But if Knoxville could pull off that win in week 9, I think that should propel them into the playoffs.
Yep. Yeah, I'm really interested to watch, the next couple weeks for Knoxville, because I think, like to your point, I don't know. Marquette, my thoughts on Marquette have changed after that Elmwood Brimfield result. And we'll reference that here in a minute. But and then that Stark County game left, I think, becomes really important for both those teams. When you look at it, and obviously you have Stark County already at 5 wins, Knoxville looking, I believe, Knoxville at 4, looking to get to 5. Yeah. So it becomes very critical for them. Yep. All right. Well, West Hancock 62-6 over LVC. We said in the Crystal Ball episode, we thought that West Hancock was a team to watch for, and here we are, the Titans now with 4 wins on the year, knocking on the door of the postseason. That's a great story there in West Hancock. Braden Carter, 9 for 10, 190 yards and 3 touchdowns. Hunter Froman, his main target, grabbing 3 catches for 117 yards and 2 scores. They're breaking some records down there. I can't think of exactly what they were, but the last week or two, they've put up some record-setting type of numbers. Jordan Crowley had a receiving touchdown as well. Titans added 200 rushing yards and 4 more touchdowns on the ground. They can earn that playoff qualifying spot in a win next week against Bureau Valley. So great story out there for Coach Dorothy and the Titans.
Coach Dorothy, if you're listening and you get that win against Bureau Valley, you have an automatic invite to the Instant Reacts. We'd love to have you on the show and talk about the Titans because, again, we saw it from afar, kind of what the schedule had left and how they had been playing, even in games that they might have fallen in. That this was a talented group. So, congratulations to the Titans. Don't want to celebrate too much just yet. Bureau Valley put up some fight against Illini West, but I have been impressed with West Hancock, and I do believe they will be in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that Bureau Valley squad. They fall short to Illini West. Illini West gets the win 28-20. Isaiah Knotts ran 16 times for 173 yards, 3 touchdowns. This is a much-needed win for the Chargers here. Bureau Valley tied this game up at 20 late in the fourth quarter, but it was Knotts who put the stamp on this one, dashing, going 75 yards for the touchdown with 20 seconds remaining to secure the win. Mitch, before I forget, I should have given a shout out to Mitch Elder. I also met him on the Geneseo sidelines. So Coach Elder's son is helping out at Geneseo. He's flying the drone. So I'm meeting drone pilots at every game I go to now.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. Drones, helicopters, camels. We've seen a lot of it this year.
So anyway, shout out to Mitch Elder. Great to meet him on the sidelines there at Geneseo. And, you know, for this Elder-led Bureau Valley squad, they fall short in this one, but you can see there's progress being made. They battled in this one in the end.
Yeah, they got that touchdown late, and he thought, okay, this is going to overtime, and shortly after that, Knotts rattled off that 75-yarder. So, in the end, a good win for the Chargers. Still a path for them, as we talked about. They have Monmouth United, which I believe that they will win, and then closing the regular season with Elmwood Brimfield, which now looks maybe more like a winnable game than it might have a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to follow there. They need 2, and I think there's a chance they could get them. So, we reference Marquette getting the win 51-6 over Elmwood Brimfield. So impressive here from the Crusaders. I didn't know, like we've talked about on the show, I really didn't know what to make out of this game. I thought Marquette had competed pretty well throughout the course of the season, but this type of performance really impressed me. Tough loss there for Elmwood Brimfield, but let's get into what week 8 looks like in the LLC large side of things.
Okay, where are we at here? Let's find our schedule. On the large side, we didn't talk about Farmington just yet. We have them on the small side because it was a crossover game. But Farmington will host LVC. You've got that West Hancock team we just talked about hosting Bureau Valley. Macomb will host Elmwood Brimfield. Knoxville's on the road at Marquette. And United is at Illini West.
Yeah, so I think looking around, that Bureau Valley West Hancock game becomes critical for West Hancock, trying to grab that 5th win there. And against the Bureau Valley team that we think is kind of on the rise, they're improving week by week. Interested to see if Elmwood Brimfield can bounce back. Tough road trip to Macomb. But man, they're certainly desperate to get kind of, things headed back in the right direction. Knoxville at Marquette, again, really intriguing with a, non-conference game there, especially after what Marquette did this past week.
Yeah, I think you're right on track there. Illini West, right? They need these next 2 wins. I do believe they can get this one at United. But, yeah, I'm with you, especially in that Knoxville game. It's a must-win for them. But intrigued, too, on West Hancock because I think they can win that one. I think they can win their Week 9. And we could be talking about the Titans in the playoffs this year.
Yep. Well, let's talk about the small school side of things. And while we're talking small schools, should we just start with Farmington? Or actually, let's pull up the scoreboard. Yeah. We'll start with Farmington because that was a huge win for them. Give us the scores of everybody, Mitch, and we'll start with Farmington.
All right. On the small side, you had the big one was Anna on Weathersfield getting past Princeville 17-14. A-Town with a nice win over Havana 31-26. You had Monmouth United getting their first win of the year 54-18 over South Fulton. Rushville Industry, we'll talk about that game here in a second. 54-19 over. Do I have that right? Do I have both those scores were the same? Was it 42-19 or 42-18 against South Fulton there? I think it was. So pretty similar scores for the Rockets and the Red Storm.
Yeah.
And then you had again the game you just mentioned. Farmington got the crossover win 63-12 over Roval Williams.
Yes, I have United 54-18 and Rushville Industry 54-19.
I can't read that tiny font, Greg. Are you kidding me?
It's in the notes as well,
That's the
Oh.
font I'm referring to. It's my own notes.
Okay. Well, there we go.
Anyway, let's talk about Farmington.
Yeah.
We mentioned what a performance it was on Friday night for their freshman quarterback, who continues to impress. I need to text Coach Vallis and look at the numbers for this whole squad just to see the numbers that they're starting to rack up. But as mentioned, freshman quarterback Carson Noy was 19 of 24, 376 yards and 7 touchdowns in this win. Jack Gronwald had 3 of those, but Boston Smith, Jackson Ray, Trevor Fry, and Landon Crawford each brought in a score as well. So I continue to believe that that Farmington is being slept on a little bit in 2A. I really do believe they are a fantastic group. The way that they've been playing, now that this offense is really clicking on all cylinders, we saw them get past a talented team in Macomb. They'll see a lot more of that in the 2A North. We've talked about how, potentially talented that 2A bracket will be. But I still think Farmington is one of the best teams in 2A, and they proved it with this performance on Friday.
Yeah, incredible performance with 7 touchdowns. Mitch, should we let people in a little bit on the behind the scenes here? Mitch, we decided that if we were going to go with Nick Houston as the player of the week, deservedly so. Great effort from him to lead his team to back-to-back conference titles. And the way he did it with scoring 3 different ways, right? We talked about that. But to be able to win that award over someone who threw 7 touchdowns, we decided we didn't want that responsibility to spread that news. So we actually made head coach Jeremy Adolphson text Coach Vallis, and they let us in on the text thread. So credit to both of them for being good sports. And Carson Noy's a freshman. I think he's got some games in his future that are going to be helmet worthy. So
could be in 4 days. I mean,
yeah.
just the way that he's been playing. But yeah, not to always make that, a deciding factor. But I do believe that there are helmets in Carson Noy's future. But yeah, having a little fun there with coaches that have a long-standing history made this a little bit more fun, a little bit easier to decide on.
Yep. All right, well, let's go through some of the other results here. You had Abingdon Avon 31-26 over Havana, so tough loss here for the Ducks. They sit at 3 wins with South Fulton this week, but a week 9 game against Rushville Industry. So a team in Havana that I liked. I liked kind of the on paper what they had this season, and it seems like maybe they're going to fall a little bit short. We'll see what happens. It would be an upset.
Yeah,
it would be an upset over a Rushville Industry team that we've been pretty impressed with. We'll talk about them in a minute, but yeah, this is a hard one. And credit to Abingdon Avon, because we talked about they had some close games and they couldn't quite get it done. In this one, it's another close game, and they are able to get the win.
Yeah, I think you said it best earlier that this was really the game that Havana needed to have, because you don't want to be staring at Rushville Industry in week 9. So not to take away from A-Town's win, it was a great performance by the Tornadoes, but Havana just has some work to do.
Yep. All right, Anawan Wethersfield, 17-14 over Princeville. Maybe one of the best, most evenly matched games of the year in the LLC. And it was one of those matchups we thought early in the year that would be a great matchup. Princes took a 14-7 lead into the half, a pair of rushing touchdowns from Caden Sarnes and Eli Christensen, but it was Anawan Wethersfield tying it up in the third quarter. Backup quarterback Aiden Verstrate to Cole Goodley, so a pair of juniors for the Titans connecting on this critical game-tying touchdown. Late in the fourth quarter, Jonathan Torres hits the clutch field goal. That's the difference. Titans win 17-14. Worth noting here, quarterback Maddox Heitzler sat out for a majority of this game. You never know how much that directly impacted this Titan team or kind of how they performed, but it's certainly a very talented piece that you didn't have in your rotation this week.
Yeah, I expected this game to be close regardless, but yeah, we had seen him go down on a hit early in the game. He did come back. I think that's important for the future of this team moving forward. He did come back, but credit to Anawan Wethersfield for being able to kind of weather that storm and regroup quickly. Like you said, Princeton led at half, and Anawan Wethersfield was able to come back. So, but it was tight. They had a late field goal. And then I think they got an interception later there at the end that really sealed the deal. So as Annawan Wethersfield continues to march towards the crown here in the small side, which I believe now that they're past Princeville, they could most likely they'll wrap that up, having already gotten past Stark County. Just a great win and a team with a lot of momentum heading into the playoffs.
Yep, a great win capped off with a late field goal and defensive stop for the Titans. I'd say that's good for the View from the West Game of the Week, sponsored by Nate Neighbor of Modern Woodmen of America. From protection to saving to retirement, contact Nate Neighbor to put together your financial game plan. He's just a call away, 309-233-2656. Modern Woodmen, touching lives, securing futures. Another great game here. Could have been a Game of the Week type of candidate for Monmouth United, getting the win 54-18 over South Fulton. Red Storm pick up their first win of the season, and they snap a 16-game winning streak. So we already talked about Sherrard getting their first win of the year, United getting their first win of the year. You know, every team, every program kind of gauges that success a little bit differently, like we mentioned with Sherrard. Nice win here for United. Happy for that program and those kids to, leave the field with a win.
Yeah, and congratulations to Coach Goodwin on all that. Tough year, certainly. Tough couple seasons, really. But great win over South Fulton. Couple tough games here to close out the year with Illini West and Princeville, but good for them to get that big win.
Yep. All right, well, speaking of big wins, Rushville Industry gets the win 54-19 over Stark County like we talked about. Mitch, you collected these numbers and put them in the notes. I'm going to let you read through it. This is impressive.
Yeah, well, shout out to our guy, Scott Bickerman, for sending this along. He called me out that I would enjoy this, and you bet I do. Rockets rushed for 43 times. No passes in this one. 43 rushes. Greg, I'd have to look back. Might be the most we've ever said. 547 yards rushing for Rushville Industry. 547. That has to be the most that we've had this year. We've talked a lot about Sebastian Berteau this year and Rylan Reimolds. 208 yards for Sebastian, 2 scores. 205 for Rylan and 3 scores. Landon Meyer and Bradley Hollingsworth also scored for Rushville Industry. So absolutely dominant performance here. You just do not see that. 547 yards rushing against a team that was 5-1 in Stark County. So the Rockets are playing well. They'll be a force to be reckoned with come playoff time.
Well, when you hear 547 yards on the ground, you know that there's somebody or multiple somebodies on an offensive line doing something the right way. So for their efforts last week, and pretty much every week we talk about Rushville Industry and their line play, I believe they earned, no doubt about it, they have earned the Godfather's Pizza and Silvis Offensive Line of the Week. We got some names here. We're going to read through the starters. We're going to read through just all the guys that are listed as offensive linemen here. Brody Bush, Trevor Perry, Jackson Spencer, Nolan Kettering, Mitch, our guy, Mitch Armstrong.
fan of the show, whether he listens or not. Fan of the show, automatic Hall of Famer.
Yep. Zach Wegner, Chase Bickerman. You also got Brenton Hollingsworth, Lucas Morinville, Gavin Jacobs, Cole Collins, Deegan Utter, J.C. Brewer, and Grace Kambamba. So we got everybody in there. Give them all credit for this type of performance. Get all the names in there. So congrats to those guys. They have 2 large, 1-topping pizzas coming, courtesy of our friends at Godfather's Pizza in Silvis. Now I realize that Rushville Industry to Godfather's Pizza in Silvis, Illinois is a bit of a road trip, but here's
2 hours, right?
Here's what I'm saying though, is that maybe that could be a playoff type of road trip if Class 1A leads Rushville Industry up towards the Northwest Upstate Illini. They got to go right by Silvis. Yeah. So there you go. On the trip there, the trip back, stop by and pick up some pizzas from our good friend Andy at Godfather's in Silvis.
Yeah, look, whether you can take advantage of that or not, there's no way that we couldn't give this award to Rushville Industry this week with a performance like that. So, I hope it works out that you're going to be driving through Silvis at some point to reward the big fellows up front. But this is a group that most likely will have 2,000-yard rushers in Reimolds and Berteau. Reimolds is already over 1,000. Berteau needs 261 to get there, which I fully anticipate that happening in 2 weeks. So great job. Certainly with a team named like Rushville, that they're true to their name. We appreciate that. So again, congratulations to all those guys that you mentioned. Congratulations to Rushville Industry on a great performance, a great week, and again, some momentum. They already had some, but even more momentum heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, Rushville definitely living up to the name, their namesake.
It's not Passtown.
No, it's not. All right.
I wonder if there's a Passtown. I'm not gonna look it up.
Well, you're Google searching Passtown, the Lincoln Land small side of things, Havana at South Fulton, Anawan Weathersfield at Roval Williamsfield, Abingdon Avon at Rushville Industry, and Princeville at Stark County. So we've talked about the.
I don't think there's a Passtown.
No, probably not. Probably not.
No.
All right, so we've already talked about the large side of things. So let's talk about the small schools here and what we see. That Princeville at Stark County. That's a game we'd had circled for a while, and here we go. Yep.
And Stark County started 5-0. We knew that the back half of their schedule was a little bit more of a talented group of teams. I want to see the Rebels get back on track. I want to see them getting some or maintaining the momentum that they had the first 5 weeks, because the 1A North is going to be a gauntlet, and to go in at 5-4, you're going to get matched up with someone really, really good. Not that you wouldn't with any record, but I want to see them get back on the right track. Princeville's looking to do the same thing, though, because I think they're going to be a good playoff team as well. Good matchup there between two really good teams. Hey, A-Town coming with the win. Can they play spoiler against a Rushville Industry team going on the road to play the Rockets? Can we going to rush 43 times, 47 times, whatever it was, for 9 million yards? It's going to be tough, but A-Town riding some momentum to get in there. I expect Anawan Weathersfield to win against Roval Williamsfield. That would give them a share at the very least of this conference. So congratulations to them. And I think Havana will get back on the right track against South Fulton. But yeah, the big one with the most intrigue and certainly with playoff implications from a seeding perspective is Princeville going to Stark County.
Yeah, I would think that game could come down to the wire. And I'm interested to see. So Princeville has Stark County and United left. So their schedule is, I would think, a little easier in week 9 than when you talk about Stark County playing Knoxville. But I want to see, like you said, which one of these teams in Princeville and Stark County can really grab some positive momentum, keep that positive momentum building as they get towards the playoffs. I think this game will go a long way in that, and then Stark County go matching up against Knoxville in week 9 certainly will do the same as well. So, all right, Mitch, does that wrap up our LLC coverage? Still plenty of football to talk about here.
Yeah, I think it does. And now we're going to bring in our guy, Kyle Kampmier, to talk about NUIC 11-man and 8-man, and we'll be back after this break.
This episode of View from the West podcast is brought to you by Simulation Sports. In addition to golf simulators and batting cages, Simulation Sports provides golf club repair, custom fittings for driver shafts, and even private lessons for golf, baseball, and softball. Whether you're looking for a fun group activity or want to fine-tune your skills and equipment, Simulation Sports has something for everyone. Visit their facility at 400 South Main Street in Monmouth, Illinois, or go to thesimulationsports.com to start playing today.
At Modern Woodmen of America, service is about more than our members. It's about our community, too. We share values that include personal financial security and helping friends and neighbors in need. We're your partner helping you protect your future, and together we're making an impact here in our local communities. I'm Nate Neighbor. Find me on the Modern Woodmen of America website.
Get to know your local Modern Woodmen representative to plan for your financial future and learn about valuable member benefits. Modern Woodmen of America. Touching lives, securing futures. Securities offered through MWA Financial Services, Inc., a wholly owned subsidiary of Modern Woodmen of America.
The View from the West Player of the Week is brought to you by Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They offer name brands such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. You can check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com. Welcome back. Let's get into the Northwest Upstate Illini. Huge week in the NUIC. So, of course, like we mentioned, we're bringing in Kyle Kampmier from NUICfootball.com. Kyle, every week we get closer and closer to some of the best football of the season. And this week 8 should feature some pretty good football as well.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of big, impactful games around the state, really, that are going to wreak havoc on the playoff projections and what we could potentially see. Obviously, right now we've seen those cut lines driving downward, but there's a lot of people speculating that that cut line is going to go back up. We'll see. Obviously, our projections state otherwise, but you know, like we always say, you still got to play the game on the field. So anything's up for grabs right now.
Yep. All right. Well, speaking of games on the field, let's talk through the results from Week 7, and then we'll, of course, get into Week 8. All right, let's get the grab. There we go. All right, Mitch, read us through some results, then we'll talk through some of the specifics here.
All right, you had Stockton defeating EPC 46-8. You had Lena Winslow defeating Galena 46-0. It was Dupek getting past Forreston 34-20. Morrison defeated Dakota 48-16, and Fulton got another win against Hazel Green Southwestern. That was 56-40.
All right, let's read through some of the specifics here from the results. Like you said, Morrison gets the win 48-16 over Dakota, so the Mustangs pick up their first win of the year. Carson White was efficient at quarterback, 8 for 10, 184 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also saw Brady Anderson have a great night. That's great to see for him. And the Mustangs, 110 rushing yards and a score, as well as 74 receiving yards and another touchdown. Levi Milder added 58 yards on the ground with a score and 110 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. So, you know, it's been a tough season for the Mustangs, but really good to see them playing well here. Let's keep going down the way here. Dupek, 34-20 over Forreston. Lucas Russell missed the game due to state golf, which actually, Kyle, where did Russell end up finishing in state?
You had to throw me off. I know he finished in the top 20. I don't remember his exact placement, but he was top 20.
He advanced to the final day, right?
Yes, that's correct.
I know we talked about that. Yeah, that's great. Excellent. Good for him. And, you know, Coach Demas was on the Instant Reacts podcast on Friday night. He credited senior Braden Cox and junior Blake Scroggins for stepping into the quarterback role. But, man, the name that we were familiar with, that we continue to be impressed by, Dermot Golan, 334 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns, now over 1,100 yards on the season. And a little bit of defense as well. Justin Anderson and Trey Jones combined for 25 tackles to help limit the Forreston attack. I mean, this Dupek squad, we'll talk about the matchup they got coming up, but Kyle, they continued to impress.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people expected Dupek to be down with the absence of Jackson Diedrich and a Cooper Hoffman to graduation, along with quite a few others. But what people failed to realize is how many kids they actually returned off of last year's team. And yeah, they have to go through and do some things differently as far as what they do. But, you know, we talked to Coach Demas at the beginning of the year, and even he stated, he goes, we've never really truly had a set offense. We've always been able to adjust based off of our personnel, and that's showing true this season, especially without the exceptional quarterback play that we're used to seeing out of Dupek for the last 6 years.
Yeah, it's just a ton of fun to see kind of how they've adapted to the personnel they have, and it was interesting to hear from Coach Demas and talk about, like, This is a group that wants to play that hard-hitting football. This is a team that wants to play physical, and they want to kind of grind you down. Very similar to what we see in Monmouth-Roseville, right? Like from the Three Rivers. So I think that it's just cool to kind of hear that. The kids have bought in, and they found a lot of success there. So Lena Winslow gets the win 46-0 over Galena. Alex Schlichting, Aiden Wild combined for 294 rushing yards. Schlichting broke this game open, breaking away with a 99-yard touchdown run in the first quarter. Wild also had 190 yards and 2 touchdowns, so Galena continues to impress. Speaking of impressive, Stockton, 46-8 over Eastland Pearl City, 114 rushing yards and a score for Jack Menzendijk. Noah Larson continues to be efficient, get the job done through the air, 6 for 9, 107 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also added a rushing score. Kyle, was this the game you were at, Stockton and EPC?
Yeah, I was there, and it was a good one early on, and then Stockton took over and really just impounded their will on EPC to the point where it just became a snowball type effect game.
Yeah. What was the the point spread, or what did you think the difference was going into this week? I assume Stockton was the favorite, but
yeah,
did this kind of go above and beyond what you thought the result would be?
Yeah, I thought that, that EPC would give it a better game. It's why we named it our game of the week. And, the spread itself, the projection was Stockton 35, EPC 14. So, it was a 3-touchdown differential projected, but, to limit EPC to just one score with the explosion that they have, and they still let Zier run for 142 yards. Granted, he'd had the one rush for 77 yards in the lone score of the game that accounted for half of that yardage total, but EPC needs to find some other help, and Stockton's defense, lived up to the billing of what we've talked about all season long as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that you really come away impressed with Stockton's defense again, kind of rising up to the occasion. They did it against Lena Winslow. They did it here against Eastland Pearl City. They're going to have to do it again this week. We'll talk about that matchup in a minute, but one more game to get to. Fulton 56-40 over Hazel Green Southwestern. Mitch, Tony Z, our boy Tony Z on the play-by-play. His voice was getting a workout in this one.
Yeah, a lot of honey and tea, hopefully for Tony to get some recovery there. But, we were getting text updates from this game, and my phone about blew up with the amount of touchdowns and stats that were coming in. So Fulton scores over 56 points for the second week in a row to improve to 2-5. So, look, good for Fulton. We've always kind of talked about how there's always teams that are going to be in this conference that are way better than their record is, and Fulton is certainly the example this year, I think. And they've got a opportunity to really finish the year strong. So they've won 2 in a row. I think they've got a chance to win, certainly this week against Morrison. But good to see Braden Myers have a good day, 155 yards, 4 touchdowns. Freshman Wyatt Connor continues to play really well, 107 yards there. And Landon Liu had 81 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. So, again, Fulton offense was clicking. And, again, just good to see them get in the win column again.
Yeah, we talked about it. This Fulton schedule was really, front-loaded. I think if this schedule's a little more balanced and they sneak a win out earlier in the season, you kind of wonder what that does for their full season, how it plays out. Now, obviously, they'd still have to beat a team or two along the way that, either way, no matter what time of year it comes up in the schedule. But I think that this Fulton team really kind of got beat up early, and that, they went through it, and now they're, finding some success with, kind of some different guys. They got that great senior leadership, like you mentioned, but they got some underclassmen that are stepping up and making a name for themselves, and we've seen that before with this Fulton program. So I think a lot to look forward to. This year didn't quite go the way they wanted to, but I think maybe try to build some momentum these last couple weeks.
If they can get back to 4-5, which is what they finished at last year after starting 0-5, that's a huge credit to Coach Lower and to this program for sticking to it, sticking to the process, doing the things that make Fulton a good football team, and they can get some momentum heading into next season.
Yep. All right, should we get into Week 8, boys? We got some good ones here. Dakota,
yeah, let's do it.
Dakota at Galena. Lena Winslow at Eastland Pearl City, Fulton at Morrison, Forreston in a non-conference game going on the road to Leroy, and the big one, Stockton at Dupec. So, I mean, I guess before we dive into Stockton at Dupec, I guess, Kyle, I kind of want to pick your brain about the non-conference game with Forreston and Leroy, because this seems like a pretty critical game for those teams trying to make the playoffs, but then also for playoff positioning in this 1A field.
Yeah, it's definitely got huge playoff implications on the line here, most notably for Forreston, because not only do they have Leroy this week, but then they have to take the challenge of going on the road to Stockton next week. So Forreston to make the playoffs, in my personal opinion, this is a must-win game for the Cardinals, looking ahead of what they got on their schedule at the number one ranked Blackhawks. Not that Forreston hasn't had the ability to beat top teams before. We saw it just happen here back in 2021, but at the same token, that's a tough Stockton team that they'll have to beat. Leroy's going to present themselves quite the challenge, too. This is a Panthers team that went to the semifinals last year, graduated 18 players. They started the season off 0-3 and now have won 4 consecutive games. So Coach BJ Zalesnik is doing a great job with this team. They have a very physical defense, very similar running styles. I mean, you're going to watch Leroy go into a single wing formation, double wing formation, I formation. Forreston will be very used to what they're seeing. It's just what team is going to really win the line of scrimmage. I was talking to my friend Brian Owens down there at Leroy earlier this week, and he had stated, he goes, I think this could be an under 2-hour game and an under 35-point game collectively. And I said, so you're saying like 2 possessions per team per half? and it very well could be, But
so looking at Leroy's schedule, and sorry, Kyle. But like you've mentioned, they've won 4 in a row. They have not faced the toughest of teams. A 1-6 Fieldcrest, a 2-5 Central A&M, a 1-6 Fisher team. A nice close win against Hayworth, but you look at what Forreston's been doing in that same amount of time. It's hard to think that Leroy has played a tougher competition than Forreston. I don't think that's a huge reach to say. But even with Forreston falling in back-to-back games, I would still favor them against Leroy just based on the level of competition. Maybe there's momentum there on Leroy's side. That's a fantastic program, a great season last year. We saw them in the Lena semifinal. But Forreston coming off of a close-ish, a tight game against Dupec, I think that'll serve them well.
Kyle, looking at, Leroy's schedule, you talked about them graduating 18 last year. So coming into this year, Coach BJ Zalesnik had some things to figure out, right? They lost some impact players from a really great team a year ago. Early in the season, this Leroy team played some really good teams. When you're talking Ridgeview, Lexington, I don't know how good their resume is, but they're 7-0. I think I always feel like Downs Tri-Valley is going to be a competitive, pretty good football team, a good program year over year. And Gibson City, Melvin Sibley, I feel the same way about them. They fell short in those games, but I think if those games came later in their schedule after this Leroy team had kind of gotten up to speed, makes you wonder if things would be different for them, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, so Ridgeview, Lexington, yes, they are 7-0. Out of all of the teams that are looking at playoffs out of the heart of Central Illinois Conference, it's easy to state that they probably have had the easiest conference. This is a team that was 2-7 last year, so turning around into a 7-0 season right now is a huge turnaround, and we have them projected to go 9-0 as well. But when you look at the overall strength of schedule, what you're getting at, they don't have that resume. As far as Tri-Valley, they were a team we were talking about being a big player in 2A from the get-go of the season. They've had a couple hiccups here to be at 5-2 right now, but Coach Roop always has that team ready to go. They play a physical style of football. They like the power run game. They They do a lot of things up the middle, off edge, off belly. And then GCMS. I mean, we've talked about them in the 1A field all season long, and they too have taken a couple dips, which is why I continually state I'm having a hard time understanding the Heart of Central Illinois Conference, because there's just so much stuff going on in there. But there are good teams here. Leroy is they're definitely battle tested. Going through that schedule, I would say that, yes, the loss to Tri-Valley and probably GCMS were probably good losses. I still think that for Leroy to be the team that we think that they should be, the Ridgeview-Lexington game may have been a bad loss, but it was also week 1 as well. Maybe that changes course later here in the season if they're not going to meet back up, but if, hypothetically speaking, if they were to, that could be a different outcome. But yeah, Forreston definitely has the strength of schedule. You can see that when you take a look at the ratings. Across any rating site you want to look at, you can see that happening. Where the Cardinals are definitely looking a lot stronger. They do enter this game as a 2-touchdown favorite. Will it play out that way? I don't know. But when we saw the high of Forreston in a must-win game against Galena come out with the 22-20 win against a team that was in the quarterfinals a season ago, you can tell that this Forreston team has that grit. And they gave Dupek pretty much everything they wanted last week. It wasn't enough to overcome what Dupek was able to do.
Yeah. You going to make that trip to Leroy on Saturday?
I just might. I'm thinking about it very hard, actually. Our friend Matt Surdick is going to be there. So, and of course, over the last season, I made a lot of friends down in Leroy. And a college buddy of mine, Doug Hagman, is one of the assistant coaches on the staff at Leroy, too. So it's always good to get down there and see him.
See, I always feel like we're talking about Kyle making enemies across the state with projections, but look, you're making some friends too.
I make more friends than I do enemies.
There you go. There you go. So, I don't know, Mitch, looking across the rest of the landscape, what else do you see here in the NUIC? I think that, we could go to your hometown. We can go to Fulton and Morrison. It's not a marquee wooden shoe battle, but it's pretty equal footing teams here stepping into week 8.
Yeah, I think so. I think anytime you get these guys on the field, you throw away the records because, they are playing for a trophy. They are playing for a tradition. They are playing for bragging rights. So, yeah, it's a battle of teams that have not had the years that they have certainly wanted. But again, they're still playing for something in this game. It's always going to be fun. Ian Bud Cofield will be busy. I know that for sure. Our guy Tony Z sent us the picture of the trophy this week, and I had to computer enhance onto 04 and 05. We don't talk about 03. But I had to zoom in on 04 and 05, make sure that it was still on there. But Fulton's had the bragging rights. They maybe be coming in with a little bit more momentum. But Morrison found some things that worked against Dakota, and we'll see if they can keep it going against Fulton.
Yep.
Outside of that, I would have felt a little differently. Lena Winslow and EPC had put up a bigger fight against Stockton, but seeing how that went down, now I'm kind of curious if Lee Wynn's going to do the same thing. So still some intrigue. EPC is still a team that is built that can make that a game, but they just didn't show it against Stockton. I think it's going to be a very similar game there.
Well, and you, Mitch, you mentioned it on the Instant Reacts podcast. You felt like this was the game, maybe more than any other so far, where Lena Winslow really looked like Lena Winslow. They came in, they took care of business, they got the job done, leaving no doubt. So I think, they come in playing really good football right now, and I think that they're a challenge for anybody. I think they could be a challenge for Eastland Pearl City in this one. All right, well, let's get to the big matchup here. Stockton at Dupek. Kyle, opening thoughts on this one. And I assume you're going to be there on Friday night.
Yes, I will be in Durand Friday night, so your listeners are going to hear that firsthand, but I think I put it out on the Instant Reacts anyway, so you probably have some listeners out there that have already heard that. Yes, I will be in Durand. This is definitely the marquee matchup this week. There's no doubt about it. You have the conference championship potentially on the line here. A Stockton win clinches the conference crown for Stockton. which would be their first time winning a conference title since I think 2016, maybe 2017. 2016, I know for sure they were undefeated that year, won a conference title. But since the merger of since the mass exodus, I guess you can say, this will be the first outright conference title Stockton's won in quite some time when you don't have the split division. So big impact there. Obviously, Dupec, too. We talked about them wanting to get this team graduated, transitioning into the Big Northern next year to get their second conference title. And, you go back to the COVID year, and while that spring season really sucked, you could definitely tell where Dupec was heading at that time. And there was a lot of conversation about the upcoming classes, this class being one of them, where you knew that they were going to be a challenger for the conference title. And if you look back over the past couple of years, it's been them and Lena Winslow, but Lena Winslow has dominated that, with the exception of that 2021 spring game that Lena Winslow won close, and then the 2021 fall game that Dupec won close. So it's definitely going to be a lot of fun. If Dupec wins, it creates an even bigger matchup next week that we'll talk about later. But this has a lot of intrigue around it for a lot of many purposes. And then on top of that, seedings in the playoffs.
Yeah. Mitch, what do you see in this matchup? What are kind of the games within the game here?
It's almost similar to what we talked about in that Monmouth Roseville Rock Ridge game, right? Like, can either of these teams beat the other if they're forced to pass? We've seen Noah Larson be efficient. We've seen Lucas Rossau do the same thing. You go back and look at that week 2, and that was eons ago, especially in the NUIC, at how well Stockton did against Lena Winslow. And I wish Dupec's schedule was laid out differently so we could see how they fared more, because they have Stockton and they have Lena Winslow in week 9, right? I would love if going into the Stockton Dupec game, if they had both played Lena Winslow to kind of get that common opponent and see how both of them looked. But I've been so impressed with Dupec. Dermot Dolan is certainly going to be, if not is, the leading candidate for Player of the Year in this conference, I think. But that Stockton defense has just been so good. So can they step up? And again, it's cliche. Who can win the battle of the trenches? But in the NUIC, that is who wins these games, because they're all similar offenses. They do things a little bit differently, each one. But in the end, it's can you stop the run game? And I think that is going to be no different in this game. But if they are stopping that, which quarterback can maybe take over, make a play? Kyle would know more than me. I feel like Larson's probably been in that position more with Stockton, or maybe they go to the air a little bit more, so maybe they have the edge there, but would not surprise me either if Dupec came out just swinging and doing what they do and grabbing an early lead.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if this Dupec offense can grind down at all a really stout Stockton defense. And then I'm also looking at, is there opportunities for Larson to find some things through the air? If it's timed out right, if it's the play calling is kind of designed the right way, if you can catch Dupec off balance once in a while when you do go to the air and you hit that receiver at the right time. Does that make sense, Kyle?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with Noah Larson is, and this is a part that gets overlooked because we don't see it in the statistical makeup for him, but he's the fastest kid on the field for the Blackhawks. So he really has the potential of being a dual threat QB, but he just handles himself so well within the pocket. He'll get out and escape, and once in a while he'll have to turn on the wheels and go, but he doesn't do it regularly because they don't have to drop back on a regular basis. But he's got 2 big tight ends, and everybody's, at least up here, everybody's heard of Eli Larson for the past couple of years now. Morgan Haas, though, on the other side, has definitely grown into another big play threat and actually leads the Blackhawks in receiving yards and receptions going into this game, and has been a huge impact in their passing game along with Eli Larson. But where a lot of teams are focusing on shutting Eli Larson down and jamming him, Morgan Hess is getting free and getting away and getting the open looks. So they have great opportunities there. And then on top of that, when you can get Mensendijk and Carter Blair out of the backfield going in different locations, they set themselves up so well to be effective both through the air and on the ground, which makes them very, very hard to defend. Because if you try to shut something down like Lena Winslow did in week 2, they shut down that run game. And then Stockton went over the top. And then as they started going over the top, it slowly started to open up the run game for the second half of the game, where then Stockton took full control of the game, even more than what they had opened up in the first half.
Yeah. All right, so what do the projections say then in this one? Because I think it's pretty darn close to a toss-up. Maybe Stockton's a bit of a favorite.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Stockton is the favorite. There's no doubt about that. They are they're about a 12-point favorite going into this game. So.
Wow.
I have not run the projected scores yet, but as far as the favorite is, yeah, Stockton is a 2-touchdown favorite here.
Interesting. Okay. That seems a little big for my liking, but it's interesting. So I don't know. Any final thoughts, Mitch, on this one?
I think you'll see Dupek taking lessons they learned from the Byron game. I really do.
I thought about that, actually. Yeah, that although the score got out of hand, I was really impressed with the way they managed to contain Byron for a couple quarters anyway. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And Coach Demas spoke to that. They can take a lot of lessons in a game that got away from them. So, I mentioned that they had played Lee Win. I wish that they had, but I was at the time forgetting that they had played Byron just like 2 weeks ago. So, no, a 12 is high for my liking. I'm a terrible gambler, so I don't know if I would make the right call. It just seems like that is a higher spread than I would think it would be. I don't know if I would pick it. I would abstain. This should be fun. There is still the possibility of a 3-way NUIC champion this year if things were to fall the way that they might. If Dupek were to win this week and then Lee Win wins in week 9. So I'm for that. Let's give it to all 3 of them. Who cares?
Well, there you go. This will be a good plug for listen to NUIC football podcast comes out Thursday mornings. That's where Kyle and Logan will you give picks or you kind of allude to who you think's going to win. So that's a tease ahead. You guys can all listen to that show to get the insights on the NUIC football matchup there. So all right, should we jump into 8-man football? Kyle, you want to stick around and talk some 8-man with us?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. The results from 8-man football in Week 7. Amboy gets the win 62-12 over Ridgewood. Cody Wynn, 4 receptions, 136 yards, 4 touchdowns, along with 8 tackles. Kyle, he was your 8-man player of the week, correct?
Yeah, he was. He had a big day, especially in our game of the week. I honestly, the way these two teams have played the last couple of years, you thought this would be closer, but this one kind of broke out like the 2023 state championship game did, and Amboy ran away with it, which we also saw as a potential opportunity. I think I had it projected at like 58-14 or something, and it was 62-12. So we were definitely in the ballpark as far as final score goes. But I guess I was just hoping Ridgewood would put up a little bit more scoring resistance to Amboy, just to kind of see what Amboy can really do. They haven't been tested since week 1.
Yeah. Yep. They're on a roll right now for sure, no doubt about it. So, all right, let's continue to the scores. Some more scores in the West. West Central gets the win 40-32 over FCW. So they are now on a 6-game winning streak. They lost in week 1 to West Carroll, and they've rolled off 6 wins in a row. So the Heat playing really good football right now. You had Galva getting the win 38-12 over Peoria Heights. So the Wildcats grabbed their third win of the season, led by J.P. Sloan with 3 touchdown receptions. You also had Blake Stahl ran 1 in and threw for a touchdown. Braden Murphy rushed for a touchdown as well. So Galva now sitting at 3-4. They need 2 wins to get into the playoffs and a really big matchup next week. We'll talk about it in a minute against Ridgewood, who's also sitting at 3-4. So pause for a second. We'll get back to that game in a minute here. But looking at the Northwest Division, Milledgeville gets the win 56-16 over Orangeville. The Missiles improved to 7-0. Spencer Nye, 117 yards and a score. Kyson Francis threw for 218 yards and 5 touchdowns, 3 to Evan Shank and 2 to Nye. So with the win, the Missiles are now the I8FA Northwest Division champs. And I think on the other side, Amboy won their division, or there's still games to be played, Kyle, to decide the West.
Amboy is, I believe they've already sealed it up. No.
No, you're right. They
got to play West Central this week.
That's right. They got to play West Central in week 9.
Yeah.
And on Milledgeville's side, Milledgeville is playing a crossover game and a non-conference.
Yeah, the Northwest is done.
Yes, the Northwest. Yes, Milledgeville gets their conference crown, and Amboy and West Central will battle that out down the road. So you also had West Carroll getting the convincing win 70-0 over AFC, or 70-8, over AFC. Polo gets another nice victory, 50-8 over River Ridge. The Marcos, 6-1. They continued a dominant run as they've allowed just 22 points in the last 3 games while scoring 156. So really great effort here, performance from the Marcos. Mercer Mumford ran for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also scoring on a kick return, J.T. Stevenson ran for 124 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jordan Reed ran for another. It was also career win number 100 for Polo head coach Ted Alston. So, Kyle, talk about this Polo team. And they're, outside of that one blip on the radar to Milledgeville, they're playing some really high-end football. And no shock, Coach Alston has this team playing really well, 100 wins and counting.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that you almost become numb to it, because ever since Polo has transitioned into IHSA, they've been a perennial power. They're shooting for their 6th consecutive semifinal appearance if it works out that way. If they could get to the state championship, it would be their 3rd state championship game since 2019. They have 2 playoff teams left on their schedule here, which are great precursors to help them see what they have to get ready for once again as they get into the playoffs. I don't know if Hiawatha will be much of a resistance for Polo. They've pretty much dominated them in the past years. But South Beloit's definitely a team that we're expecting to be a much stiffer challenge to the Marcos than what they were a season ago. So there is a lot of intrigue with what Polo has done. And, yeah, no surprise. Really for Polo, they just got to stay healthy. They don't have a lot of depth, which is really unlike what we've seen out of Polo over the past few years. They've always had somebody that they could throw in there, and this year they don't have that as much. So they really need to stay healthy in order to find themselves having continued success. They gave Milledgeville everything they could handle and more, and realistically, Milledgeville to me was the better team, and it played out that way. But man, for the first 43 minutes of the game, it was neck and neck all game long, and before Milledgeville pulled away. So, hats off to Coach Alston. I mean, he's done a hell of a job with Polo over all the years. 2 different stints as the head coach, and he's a Marco legend now for sure.
There you go. Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, let's read through the games coming up in the Northwest. So you said Polo will be on the road at Kirkland Hiawatha. Orangeville gets the forfeit win over Rockford Christian Life, so that game will not be happening. West Carroll goes on the road to a challenge. South Beloit's still undefeated, correct?
Yes, they are.
So West Carroll has a test going on the road to South Beloit. That's an interesting matchup there. Alden Hebron at Milledgeville and River Ridge at Harvest Westminster. So we'll stick on the northwest side of things and talk about these games first. But what do you think, Kyle, about that West Carroll South Beloit matchup?
It was really close. There's been a lot of talk and potential comparisons of what West Carroll is to what South Beloit is. South Beloit clearly has not played the schedule that West Carroll has. West Carroll's two blemishes are to a Polo team and to a Milledgeville team who are both ranked in the top 3, which is why West Carroll's rated so high. Like, there's, going back to ratings, there's obviously a lot of people talking about how is a 2-loss team rated higher than all these undefeated teams. Well, look at their schedule. You also have to take a look at recent history, too. West Carroll is in their second year of 8-man play. They've only ever lost to Milledgeville and Polo. They've beat everybody else, including the South Beloit team last year. Could this be the time that South Beloit turns it over? If South Beloit wants to be a true title contender, they have to make an impression in this game against West Carroll and come away with the win, in my personal opinion. Do I think they can do it? I do. They have size. They have speed. They have two big-bodied, abled receivers that can go up and get the ball, and they just are very, very athletic. Likewise, West Carroll has the big bodies, at least tall-wise, but they're more slender and maybe not as to the physical capabilities that a Cam Meister and a Caden Cook are. But as far as passing the ball, both teams have good quarterbacks that can get the ball in the air. Both teams have running games. Granted, West Carroll's is more of a brute force type running game with Aiden Buckles. And for South Beloit, they're trying to get Chase Harrington the outside and utilize that speed. And I think this is a very intriguing matchup. It'll be our game of the week on the 8-man side, rightfully so. You got two state-ranked teams here going at it. And, hopefully, for the sake of the NUIC, West Carroll wins. But I wouldn't be surprised either if South Beloit wins. It's going to be very close, I think.
Yeah. The other matchup I think we got to talk about real quick here is Alden Hebron going on the road to Milledgeville. So Alden Hebron sitting at 6-1. Milledgeville obviously undefeated, 7-0, the top-ranked team in IHSA according to our NUIC football polls. I think it's a 6-1 record for Alden Hebron, but again, similar to South Beloit, probably not as challenging of a schedule as what Milledgeville has seen.
No, unfortunately, you take a look at Alden Hebron's schedule, and the Northeast Division has been the most hurt division as far as overall talent, which makes it very hard to take a look and compare things to. You also take a look at the early season parts for Alden Hebron. They did get that good, what was looking like a good week 2 win against Ridgewood there, 38-24. But when you take a look at the rest of their schedule, they've only played 2 other winning teams, and one of them's only a winning team because of their schedule, and that's Hiawatha, and then South Beloit, who they got blown up by 49-7. So going into Milledgeville, yeah, I think Milledgeville's going to have their way in this one.
All right, there you go, and that would set up a big matchup, an out-of-state matchup with a North Shelby, Missouri team, which is really interesting. So we'll see if Milledgeville can go into that game undefeated, if they come out of that game undefeated. A lot on the line is for where Milledgeville and where the seeding ends up based on what Milledgeville can do the rest of the way here. So we follow along for sure. I think I'm looking at the West, division, West Prairie at Amboy, West Central at Bushnell Prairie City. But the game I'm keeping my eye on, Ridgewood 3-4 at Galva 3-4. So I think first of all, I just want to talk about it's exciting that this Galva program is playing some, meaningful football late in the season, some games of significance here late in the season, because this Galva program had been struggling for several years. So head coach Zach Anderson getting them to the point where they're playing some games with a shot at the playoffs. So I think that's exciting. He mentioned to me in text back and forth today that, it's no secret. He realizes that Ridgewood is viewed by most people, by, maybe everybody outside of Galva, as the favorite. But he said that, their group is going into it and they're excited to prove people wrong. I think it's an exciting story, and it's a good matchup to follow here in week 8.
Well, it is. And, Coach Anderson's not wrong. I mean, Ridgewood will be the favorite going into this game. But unbeknownst to a lot of people as well, I agree with Coach Anderson's viewpoint that it's going to be a closer game than what people think as well. And likewise, if Galva does get the win, that sets up a huge opportunity in week 9 for them to turn the tides, knock Ridgewood out of the playoffs, and put Galva into the playoffs. And that is really what we're looking at here, because Ridgewood needs a win just as bad as Galva needs a win in this game. A loss for either will probably just change up the playoff picture, because I think it would be a swap, because they're both favored to win their week 9 games. So the winner is going to get that leg up with a great opportunity to get that playoff spot, whereas the loser is probably going to be out because neither team's going to have enough playoff points to get in at 4 and 5.
Yeah, yep, for sure. It's exciting, and an opportunity there for Galva, and obviously a big time, needed win here for Ridgewood, because it's been a few years since they've been looking at a 3-4 record with 2 games left. So this Ridgewood program had been at a higher level the last few years. So we'll see how that all plays out. So Kyle, if you're going to be covering a game on Friday, covering a game on Saturday, you'll be Stockton and Dupec on Friday, Forreston at Leroy potentially on Saturday. You got time to squeeze in the Instant Reacts pod at 10:30 or 10:15 on Friday night?
Of course, man. That's always going to happen. We got to get the Dupec Stockton game on there, right?
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, we got to get some talking points on that. So, and hey, Kyle, before we wrap up the show, before we let you go, the hotel reservations are coming. We're booking the hotels in Normal. Mitch and I are going to be there, and I think there might be an addition to the crew this year. I think my son has been really hammering home to get a chance to go to the state championship games, so he got his own press pass for the first time this year because he's been going to games with me, so he's excited to have the credentials in hand, so he wants to be there on the day of the state title game. So I think we might have to introduce him to the IHSA state finals and all that is there on that Friday after Thanksgiving. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm glad that Mitch is coming back again because, we had a lot of fun last year, and I think we can add to it a little bit more this year as well. I think that is something to look forward to. At least that's my hopes and plans. And, when we can get the collective group together, it's always a lot of fun as well. I've always viewed the trip to the state championships as the reward for the long season, because you don't have to work as hard when you're at the state championship game. A lot of that stuff is given to you at a higher level, and it makes things a lot easier journalistic wise as well.
So maybe what you're saying is I need to have my son go down and freeze and shoot video, and I'll just sit up with you.
I think he would enjoy that, actually.
I'll make sure Mitch stays down there with him.
Sounds like a job for Gary.
All right, Kyle, I appreciate it. To everyone listening to our show, make sure you check out NUIC Football Podcast. Comes out Thursday morning, so make sure you get that. A great small school 1A through 3A information, as well as 8-man breakdown and analysis. So it's a podcast you got to check out if you don't already. And of course, we want to thank Ty Taylor. He was on earlier. Always great coverage on Friday nights, and always great recaps and coaches' interviews on Saturday mornings on Sportsline and WRMJ as well. So thank you to everyone who listens. Thanks to everyone who subscribes and follows along. Kyle, Mitch, we will see you, talk to you both again Friday night, the Instant Reacts podcast. I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun. That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.